somehow Palpatine returned.
Hey guys, let's talk some Star Wars. I say cautiously. To me, Star Wars is like a box of chocolates. You never know if it's the quality of the products or the fan base that gave me my 13th reason. It's no secret that discussing anything Star Wars related online or God forbid, in person, is going to lead to various opinions. But I think there's one thing everyone can agree on when it comes to the quality of a Star Wars product. The original trilogy is good. Revenge of the Sith is at least decent. We never talk about this. You know, actually there's a few things, but main thing is that Star Wars The Clone Wars is very good. More than even the original trilogy, I got my love for Star Wars from this series. Even if it started as a last minute decision from my uncle on my birthday to see the movie in theaters, when in hindsight I could have done literally anything else. But we all have to start somewhere. Regardless, this show has stuck with me since I was a kid, and it's only gotten better over time. And I've always wanted to make a video on why I love this series and how much it means to me, especially nowadays. And with this ranking style I've taken up, I wanted to provide a fresh way of doing it. Originally I thought about ranking each episode, but I wanted to try something nicher for this series. Since this show is an anthology with different stories happening every season with combinations of characters, why not rank all the stories it tells? So I'm going to rank every story arc from the show from worst to best. Now, not every episode is connected to any specific arc, but I still want to talk about them, so whichever arc it comes after, I'll discuss it briefly to bring this video full circle. This was a very long journey, with the script being 42 pages long, so yeah, let's just get going.
What the fuck is this?
Oh my god, this was painful. So when I was like 8 years old, I got a DVD of the Clone Wars including 5 episodes from the first season of the show. It included the premiere, the Malevolence arc, and you would think it would have the episode Rookies as the final episode on it. It would make sense since it was the 5th episode of the series and a relatively singular episode since they didn't make more with the Domino Squad at the time. But no, it wasn't on there. What was on there was the first episode of the R2 Lost arc that involved R2 going missing and Anakin and Ahsoka trying to find him with a new R3 unit.
I don't really want this.
Legit, this arc serves nothing to no one in this series, and it is the most kiddie shit the show has ever made. Complete with basic moral lessons, more annoying plucky sidekick dialogue from Ahsoka, and the grossest, most vile-looking fucker in the series.
I need this man dead.
And all this is made worse by the animation, which just looks plain awful here. The lighting and textures are so blown out of proportion that it makes the movie look halfway decent. Right from the gate, you know you're in for some shit, as the opening has the most lazy sounding narration in the whole series.
After suffering a series of disastrous defeats at the hands of General Grievous, the Republic's foothold in the Outer Rim is in jeopardy.
I feel you, Tom Kane. You know we deserve better. The adventure is so boring and leads to nowhere. R3 is seriously so annoying, and Ahsoka constantly defending his fuck-ups makes her the most insufferable she's ever been. Oh, Master, he's just a silly little guy. He wouldn't do anything to try and kill you. Also, R3 is a spy for Grievous, a twist so obvious that I'm pretty sure Anakin was able to suss him out from first glance. So if that's the case, why put your spy at risk by shooting at him with a bunch of Vulture droids? Can you, not be stupid for a second, Grievous? The next episode is slightly better, mainly because of a couple cute interactions involving R2 and Anakin, and the silly astromech fight at the end. Also, the score goes so unnecessarily hard, you can calm down, Kevin. Do you know what arc you're composing for? Also, I don't know how I didn't realize this sooner, but where the f was 3PO in all of this? Like this would be an ideal arc to include him in. But no, we absolutely need this vile fucker here. Totally necessary, trust me. This guy's the key to all this. Honestly, looking at the pedigree of Clone Wars content, I expect this to be something that the Bad Batch would have done. But no, this was something the Clone Wars created, and it's one of the worst stories in Star Wars history. Surely the next arc isn't nearly as bad. Okay, so I'm about to say something that might get my fan card revoked, but I don't think 3PO and R2 are that fun to be around on their own. Or at least when the story doesn't service their conclusion, or they aren't around other characters they can banter off of. They kind of just don't work as protagonists. It's like if you gave Beard from Ted Lasso his own episode. Oh wait. And no story in Star Wars expresses this notion better than their own solo arc from season 4. This was easily the most forgettable arc in the show for me as a kid. Or maybe I just didn't watch it or didn't want to watch it, I don't know. And yep, I still feel the same now as an adult. This arc is pointless filler before we get to the true peak of the season and some of the most gripping stuff in all of Star Wars. I mean, there's some cute homages to Gulliver's Travels and Wizard of Oz in the second episode, even if they don't amount to anything. This is the first arc to have all the clones redesigned into episode 3 armor, and I like them a lot more. I like the designs for these Ent meets Davy Jones crew looking fuckers. They look like ideal ancient gods, and I like them. And the ending with Commander Wolf was pretty cute and funny.
We have been on quite an adventure.
Well, I'm certain Wolf would love to hear about it.
Actually, sir.
I'm going to kill you and then kill you again.
And yeah, I don't have much else I like. 3PO is more annoying here than funny. He feels like one of those privileged white brat characters you would see in other shows and movies. And I don't think the writers intended to write him in a way that I want him to die, because I love 3PO otherwise. But they were close with it. R2 is just vibing in this arc and really doesn't get to do much. The story itself felt very repetitive. Oh look, new creatures, we gotta fix their problems. Okay, bye now. Oh look, new creatures, we gotta fix their problems too. Okay, bye now. Oh look, the solution to the first episode is 3PO kicking a door shut.
Is that it?
I think so.
It took 20 minutes, aka a whole episode, to get there. But that's it. Whatever, I'll forget that this arc existed by the time I'm done with this video. Surely the next arc isn't nearly as bad. To talk about the worst of the Clone Wars, I of course have to talk about its very humble beginnings, the movie. But to be more specific, the Jabba's Son arc. Yeah, this was really how we started one of the greatest pieces of Star Wars ever. An arc where the heroes are on a rescue mission to save Jabba the Hutt's son. It doesn't get more thrilling than this. Truth be told, the only reason why this arc isn't the lowest is mainly nostalgia. I can't help it. This was my start to the series as a kid, and I was made crazy because of it. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. As you could tell, kids are stupid. I mean, this arc starts out fine with the skirmish to get to the baby hut, but then you remember what this arc is about and it feels more empty. The quippy banter between Anakin and Ahsoka has yet to feel earned, as they've only been together for like, I don't know, a couple of hours at this point. And Ahsoka in general in this... Okay, so this is coming from someone who says that she's my favorite character in all of Star Wars. She sucks here. Her personality is just an even more annoying version of Anakin from Attack of the Clones. Her attempts at cracking jokes and quips feels forced and irritating, and she only really feels useful at the end. I do think looking back based on where she is right now, it's an amazing transition, but dude, just looking at this arc in isolation, please no more. Please no more of this. There's also other things that don't work, like the pacing is just so bad. There's so many scenes that just explain the same information we've already watched or heard and just pad out the runtime more than it should. The structure is even worse considering the fact that we have new storylines and characters at the last third of this arc, with Padme going to meet with Jabba's fruity uncle to get more intel, only to find out he's been working with Dooku the whole time. 5 minutes after he was introduced. Perfectly laid out twist, I tell you what. The action feels so stilted and awkward, such as the Obi-Wan and Ventress duel. The animation is wildly unfinished and gets worse as the arc goes on. And again, this concept is absolute poodoo. Like, not only does this try to make us feel for Jabba the Hutt of all characters, the same character that enslaved Anakin and his mother, the same character who risked people's lives for entertainment and even killed them if he didn't like them, the same character who would later capture Anakin's children, the same character who put Princess Leia in that outfit, but it all leads to nothing. None of the storyline reaps the benefits of this arc, as the trade routes are never utilized or even talked about ever again in the show. So congrats movie, you've completely wasted my time. Also, there's so many things in this that are just so funny to me. When Jabba hears that his son was killed from Dooku, his reaction is one of just inconvenience? Why did you roll your eyes at that? Your son is dead, Slugman. And the funniest thing of all, when Obi-Wan goes to meet with Jabba, he has his Jedi robes on. And when he talks with Jabba, he still has it on. Then in the next scene he's in, he's not wearing it anymore. So did this motherfucker just leave his dirty ass laundry in this crime boss's house? Forget trying to execute Anakin and Ahsoka for causing a minor inconvenience to you. Kill this fucker for making you pay for his cleaning. But as much as I can't stand this arc for being an objectively bad story, there are still merits here. The flirty rivalry between Obi-Wan and Ventress is very fun, and I'm glad they kept this thing with them going throughout the series. The duel between Anakin and Dooku at the end is the only duel in this arc that doesn't make me feel dead, mostly because I get to hear more Christopher Lee's voice as Dooku, always a treat. And the score has some incredible pieces with uses of instruments like guitar that makes the planet of Teth feel pretty unique. Goes to show that Kevin Kiner will never stop cooking, even if it's the one good topping on this dogshit main course. Surely the next arc isn't nearly as bad. I tell you what, when season 7 of the show was announced back in 2018 at Star Wars Celebration, the amount of joy I felt for a new season for the show can only be matched by my excitement for what arcs would be included. Keep in mind, there were 52 episodes left unfinished when the show was cancelled, and we were told that only 12 would be adapted for the final season. And we knew that the Siege of Mandalore was going to be the final one, so really, there were only 2 arcs left to include. So obviously, there was so much interest in which ones were chosen. Could it be the Crystal Crisis arc, since there were story reels already made and released to the public? Maybe it would be the Son of Dathomir arc, since it would have been a good lead-in to the final arc for Maul. Or maybe they were saying it was going to be 2 arcs to trick us with the Dark Disciple arc, with it being an 8-episode arc that would have gotten people immediately on board with a sprawling narrative like that. Eventually, we got our answers, as the first arc was the Bad Batch arc, which was already released as story reels but was finished for this season as it was dedicated to Rex and the Clones and a backdoor pilot for their spin-off. We'll get to that when we get to it, but the other arc was the Martez Sisters arc, which was dedicated to Ahsoka's whereabouts after leaving the Jedi Order. I was so interested for that reason alone, as I stated before that Ahsoka is my favorite character, and her final moment in Season 5 was just so beautiful, so I wanted to see what happened to her in this arc. Turns out it was really fucking boring. I'm sure I speak for many fans of the show when I say that this arc didn't need to happen the way it did, and it definitely didn't need to be 4 episodes long. With the story that it has, it only needs to be at most 2 episodes long, especially when one of those episodes doesn't progress the plot in any meaningful way and sees the characters back in the same place they started in. But this arc was prolonged by 2 more episodes, and it's all thanks to the titular Martez sisters. These characters are just so frustrating and annoying. I couldn't care less about what happened to them, because one of them is a selfish prick who barely thinks about the people around her, including her sister, and her arc barely sees her change. And the other is a fucking moron. She constantly gets herself in trouble and makes every plan go wrong. Oh sure, let me dump this spice that could have been beneficial one way or another just because they might take my shit for payment. What a brilliant plan! man. She does get reprimanded for this stupid as shit move, but she never redeems herself for that dumbass decision. I also realized they weren't originally intended to be the characters to follow Ahsoka through this arc. They first had a character named Nix Okami as both characters combined, while also being somewhat of a love interest for Ahsoka. I'm not sure if the arc would have been better with him instead of the sisters, but at least we would have been down with one annoying character in this arc, and I'm sure that dumbass spice dump scene would have probably made more sense. I get what they were going for with these characters, as they are sort of mirrors to Ahsoka's past and potential future, but that doesn't justify them being as stupid as they are. And Ahsoka waiting until the final 5 minutes of this arc to tell the sisters that she's a Jedi removes any remarkable arc for Ahsoka in the story, as most of her conflict in this arc is her hiding her identity from them until the big reveal spelled out to them by the big bad Pike. So we have a tedious liar reveal arc. Yay! I sort of wish that this reveal was done in the very first episode of this arc, maybe right when Ahsoka saves Trace from falling off the edge and they replace this Twi'lek kid who never appears again in the arc with Rafa. They confront her about it and the arc would change to them accepting her as both a Jedi and a good person. We could get their backstories with their parents at the very beginning and it would have made them more understandable and their plights more believable. But no, let's rush that reveal at the very last minute of this arc along with Ahsoka joining Bo-Katan to stop Maul. Any nuance to find in this arc is just gone because of poor character decisions here and the god-awful pacing. But there are some good things to find here. The moment where Ahsoka looks up on the platform to a ship rising is a great parallel to when she was on the run from Anakin and the clones in the last arc she was in, as there she was looking to find a way to come back home, but here she has no home to go to. And it's also evocative of when Luke looks out to the twin suns looking for adventure. The same thing Ahsoka has been wanting her whole life, now finally granting her that wish. The scene where Anakin senses Ahsoka on the Silver Angel is emotional and shows Anakin's maturity to Ahsoka's decision quickly and perfectly. Overall, when this arc actually focuses on Ahsoka and the Jedi's effects on the people they swore to protect, it's good. But no, we gotta focus on these boring, annoying sisters who get one scene to be interesting. Hate the fact that this was the arc that came right before the final arc of the show, and that literally any other cancelled arc could have replaced it, but whatever. I'm just gonna replace watching this arc with the Crystal Crisis arc whenever I rewatch the series. Surely the next arc isn't nearly as bad. Yes, I'm shocked as well that this wasn't the lowest on the list. But oh well, let's talk about George Lucas's favorite arc in the series, because of course it is, the D-Squad arc. Sent on a mission to retrieve Separatist info, a droid squad including R2 run into trouble finding their way home. Immediately what I can say about this arc is that R2 has no business being in this. You could replace him with any other droid and it would play the same. He's treated as a side character to an arc where he's the only recognizable character. Instead, we get 3 personality-less astromechs and 2 of the most annoying characters in all of Star Wars. Literally all these characters do is bicker, complain, and bother each other the entire arc. All Froggy over here wants to do is get a promotion for doing f*** all, and that's his whole shtick. And this pit droid is the pure embodiment of well actually, and that's their banter for 4 straight episodes. Yes, this arc out of all arcs in the show was given 4 episodes to tell this meandering story.
All I ask is that you just let me die with dignity!
So you can tell how ass the pacing is. Literally no one has any change in this arc, and it's just bullshit kitty garbage. But, and this pains me to say, I can't rank it lowest because it does have some decent elements that the other arcs below it don't have. It has some decent direction and camera work in the action. The sound design for the big explosion at the end is fantastic. The art direction is striking at points, taking inspiration from the art of Mobius. I like this one joke.
Colonel, can you hear me?
Save yourselves!
Okay. Whoa!
And then, there's the best part about this arc. Gregor's story in episode 3. After going through more kitty bullshit, we meet Gregor, an ex-clone commander suffering from amnesia now working as a dishwasher. Once Gascon presents information about his clone designation, we see him reform himself back into the man he once was. It's neat to see how he starts with him living the humble life of indentured servitude to his vile restaurant owner, to sacrificing himself like his brothers before him. I'm glad though that he was brought back in Bad Batch and Rebels, since his inclusion here did feel a bit haphazard and like a last minute addition to stave off the audience's boredom. I mean, it worked for a bit, so good job. Yeah, it's bad and unnecessary to have in the show. Like seriously, they made this before making Dark Disciple or Son of Dathomir. Anyways, surely the next arc. Oh my god, it's not a bad arc. Oh my god, there is a god. An arc about Zero the Hutt. It's an arc. It's an arc about Zero the Hutt. Okay, to be fair, it was already subpar before Zero was brought into this arc. The first episode's story is about R2 and 3PO going to get Jogan fruit. Yes, this is what we're working with here. I like the part where we cut back and forth between R2 getting a spa treatment and 3PO getting a torture treatment. Peak Star Wars is right here, but that's about all I like. Bad story, what's up next?
This is fun as shit.
The second episode is really where shit starts happening. We see Cad Bane and his band of bounty hunters attacking the Senate so that Palpatine could release Zero the Hutt. Zero's still bad, although this part had the biggest laugh out of me in the whole show.
Oh, it's so bright out here. Oh my god.
But I really like how on top of things Bane seemingly is here. He's already been embarrassed enough for losing a bunch of Force children, so this is a good redemption for him. He's a total badass here with a really well thought out plan that even manages to outsmart Palpatine in probably the third or fourth most position he's ever been in. I also like seeing Anakin trying to outthink the bounty hunters without a lightsaber, though I feel like a lot of his problems would have been fixed if he, used the Force to grab a weapon, but oh well. Also, how the hell did Aurra Sing get out of prison? Did she break out immediately after she was brought there? Still, a very neat episode and a good finale for season 1. Then there's the third episode that's just sort of meh. It's about the Jedi and Cad Bane trying to hunt down Zero as he escapes from prison with his girlfriend. How anyone finds this thing attractive, I will never know. Yeah, that's the proper response. Once again, everything to do with Zero is bad and annoying. Also, they really just made the Hutts into every Italian stereotype, even giving one of them the Vito Corleone look. So they can grow facial hair. Ew. But I like seeing Obi-Wan teaming up with Quinlan Vos. I wish they did more with him than just this episode. I'm glad we have Dark Disciple, but again, I wouldn't have minded if they replaced the 8 episodes of season 7 just so the shows only could have gotten to see it. And they have a really cool final fight with Cad Bane. Yeah, literally one of the Hutts calls Cad Bane Chad.
Big hat?
Yeah, Chad, something out for blood.
In this case, it's actually pretty apt. Overall, this arc is pretty average, but at least watch it for the second episode and to see this vile creature perish.
You really mean that?
From the bottom of my fluid sac.
I think I'm gonna vomit. You know, as I get older and watch this show, I begin to actually appreciate more of the political arcs of this series, as most of the subjects it tackles are interesting and shows more views on the war that the movies rarely gave time to. That being said, there are still some political arcs that are not as thrilling as others. The Orto Plutonia arc is easily one of the more forgettable arcs of the series, even by the political arc standards. It looks at a species in various conflicts known as the Pantorans, who are blue people. Damn, that sounds so familiar. I wonder where I've seen that before. The first episode is pretty boring. It's about the chairman of Pantora fighting these other creatures for control of this moon. It's unengaging, rushed, and the chairman's annoying as shit. I like the part where he died, moving on. The second episode is better as we see the new chairman trying to find his 2 daughters who were kidnapped by this unknown bounty hunter named Greedo, who, for some reason, speaks English in this. Somehow. Yeah, this episode only really exists as a wink to the audiences who remember Greedo, of which everyone does now. Thank you, George. Speaking of big old George, it's fun to see him modeled into the series and getting into these mass shootouts. Honestly, the chairman's got badass here. I like seeing his resolve to find his family. And honestly, this show is really good at creating or reinventing their political characters. Never thought that these characters would have that much appeal to them, but here we are. Meanwhile, there's Mace Windu and Grievous, who are made even worse because of this show. Overall, this arc isn't anything special. It has its fun moments in the second half, and I like the Pantorans, minus that cum stain in the first episode. Rest in peace, you worthless piece of shit. So this arc is Padme's first arc where she's truly front and center as she navigates her way to defeating a bill that would invest in more production of clones. I like the concept of this arc, and it has more special moments in it than the Orto arc. It builds up the universe more with how many politicians representing different species in the galaxy feel about the war effort. The first episode is a good indication of this as we see Padme and Ahsoka travel to a separatist planet where we meet actual peaceful separatists, the Bontaries. It just elaborates on that heroes on both sides line that was weirdly in the Revenge of the Sith title crawl, as we see that not all separatists want to proceed with conflict. It's just that their voices are drowned out by the warmongering titans on that side. It's also neat to see the beginnings of Ahsoka's change in her views on the war, and for her to start seeing the people truly affected by it. Also, this was the first episode with the redesigns for Anakin and Ahsoka, and honestly, I like them a lot better. It's still bogged down by the lack of tension because we know how this will end, but it's definitely one of the better political arcs of the series. The next two, not so much. The second episode is fine. It sees Padme and Bail gathering votes against the bill. The episode feels very repetitive for the first half as we jump around meeting to meeting with other senators, and it doesn't have as much energy or engagement that maybe it should have. Also, the bounty hunters in that chase are dumb. Why don't you just shoot at the speeder with your wrist gun? Did you forget you had that? Anyways, this episode is saved by the ending, which is a really good one. Padme speaks with some good truth about what the costs of the war figuratively and literally are doing to the people in need, and shows her determination to speak up for the voices that can't. It's a nice arc for her in this episode, from feeling unsure about speaking up as she fears of undermining her efforts, to being able to find the right words to say in front of the Senate due to hearing out one of her maids in her situation. It's a nice growing moment for Padme that is sort of undermined in the next episode. In the weakest episode of Season 2, there are murderers in the Senate, and Padme must suss out the killer amongst them. I like that we get more information on the Kaminoans as just being sleazy politicians that made their way into the Senate because they make the clones, and seeing Padme in an active role in the story is nice, but it's rather boring. The killer is very obvious. The inspector guy just sounds like John Mulaney.
Do you know of anyone who, how to put this?
Had AIDS.
And the ending just kind of ruins Padme's moment of growth in the previous episode, as the bill is still sent through. Whatever, it's another alright political arc that has a couple of nice moments and a good start, but fiddles out as it goes along, and it undermines itself by the end. The Mon Cala arc was one of those arcs that continuously got weaker the more I watched it. As a kid, I thought this was the coolest thing ever. Now I realize I have very little things I want to talk about here. This arc focuses on our heroes, including Anakin, Padme, Ahsoka, and Daddy, trying to protect the future Mon Cala king, Prince Lee Char, from the rival Quarren people and this shark guy. First off, this is a very rare L for Kevin Kiner, as most of his score here feels very thrown together and low energy. Like legit, he gave a more epic score to the arc about a diaper-wearing Hutt than he did about the arc with Admiral Akbar in it. Also, most of our heroes here have very little to contribute to the arc in regards to growth. Like, you can legit take out Padme and nothing would change.
Perhaps we should look to armies other than clones to help our cause.
Oh, some more Noctulans?
To the Gungans, we must look.
Oh, fuck you too. I like Lee Char's arc here, and having Akbar here makes sense, and he gets a couple cool moments here and there. Also, the prince's voice sounds familiar. Wonder where I heard him in.
All people of Mon Cala who would not be slaves, have hope!
I'm Yuji Itadori. I like girls like Megan Thee Stallion.
This has some nice homages to things like Jaws and even the 2003 series. I like Tamsin's voice and design, and this arc starts the trend of Jar Jar getting bitches for no reason. Okay arc, there really isn't much to discuss here. What should be discussed is the episode that comes after it. Shadow Warrior is one of the most batshit insane episodes of the series. So get this. The new boss of Naboo gets mind controlled so that he can start a Gungan separatist attack on Naboo. He gets stabbed after breaking free from it. Anakin and Padme use Jar Jar as a replacement because he looks like him. He has a meeting with General Grievous, who immediately susses him out and gets into a fight with an army of Gungans, where he kills Captain Tarpoles and then loses by getting stabbed repeatedly. I say again, General Grievous gets his shit rocked by frogs with toothpicks. Peak Star Wars. In all honesty, that's kind of why I like this episode. It's an insane story, but then again, we already know how incompetent Grievous is, and seeing him getting decimated by amphibians is so much fun. Honestly, this is the most I've ever liked the Gungans, and the best they've ever been in Star Wars. Okay, tangent done, we can move on now. Similar to the Mon Cala arc, the Onderon arc seemingly has lowered in my opinion on it. But at least with this arc, it has the decency to not have Jar Jar, and has a pretty good end to it. The planet of Onderon has been invaded by the Separatists, since the former king decided to side with them, and has been usurped by a worse king. So as a result, a group of rebels are formed, including siblings Stella and Saw Gerrera,
My name is Stila.
the returning Lux Bonteri, and Ahsoka. This seems to be a prelude to what comes in the original trilogy, and thus, for the first 3 episodes, it goes in a very predictable direction that feels fairly repetitive and unengaging. I also think the new characters here aren't anything special. This was the introduction to Saw Gerrera into Star Wars, who's now become a very famous recurring character for the Rebels in the Disney Star Wars era. And I'm gonna be honest, I've never found him that interesting until Andor we had someone like Luthen to interact with. There's one moment at the end of the arc that makes his character more compelling, but it takes 3 3/4 of the arc to get there, so I'm left kinda bored by him. Same with Stella, as her personality starts and ends at, I'm here to fight for my people. I don't know what Lux sees in her beyond that when Ahsoka's literally right there too, but oh well. Speaking of that, I got very worried when Ahsoka entered into a love triangle between her, Lux, and Stella in the first episode, as that's easily one of my least favorite storylines in any form of media because it's so drawn out and repetitive. However, thank God it's not a main focus to the arc here, and they honestly get over that plot line by the end of the first episode, so thank you for that. And I just find it so ironic how Anakin of all people is the one to help the rebels. That's not a critique, it's just ironic. What this arc does right is showing Ahsoka's confliction to act, as if she does, it would show that the Jedi and Republic have a stake in the war on Onderon and have gotten into a conflict that they find unnecessary. But we see how independent she's become over the course of this war, and she makes her own choices to take action with the rebels because she believes to be responsible for these people and want to help. I also like how this arc ends in a tragic way with Stella's death. It shows that Ahsoka really is responsible for them, and that she can only do so much before the worst happens. It gives Lux the incentive to finally join the Republic as a way to keep Stella's spirit alive, and it foreshadows Saw's attitude towards rebellion going forward, as he was the one who got Stella in that situation in the first place, and he feels responsible for her death. We get more Hondo here, which is always a delight, and hey look, they made the fire effects finally look good in this show. So this is easily one of the show's most above average arcs, with a few strong character moments and a neat ending holding it up from being lower on the list. The corruption arc, focusing on episodes 5 through 7 of season 3, is one that starts out boring and not all that thrilling, but slowly grows into a more decent arc. The first episode sees Padme travel to Mandalore as more of their children starts getting poisoned. It sounds interesting, but it's mostly repetitive and unengaging. I like that the episode establishes more on Padme and Satine's friendship, but beyond that, it's mostly safe and unimportant to the larger story. I mean, it's worth it to see a doctor steal a child's drink so casually, but not much besides that. The second episode is a bit better, as we now have Ahsoka on Mandalore teaching the kids about government corruption and all of them trying to stop some black market conspirators. It's nice to see how mature Ahsoka has become, with her now teaching people around her age page about the importance of holding government officials accountable, and also establishing some roots in Mandalore before she returns at the end of the war. But the rest of the kids don't have much personality to them, they sort of just blend in with each other, besides this one guy who's just stupid. Also, fun fact, Corky is played by the same kid who Alan threatens in Jurassic Park, and Amos is played by the doctor who gets an episode of Mandalorian dedicated to him for some reason. Also, the ending's kinda stupid. If these guards are immune to Jedi mind tricks and Almec wants to get rid of Ahsoka, why does he bring her to where Satine is being held captive? The very thing he and we know she wants? Is he really that dumb? Oh well, it's cool to see Ahsoka and Mandalore, and it does set up Almec as an important part going forward, but it's not all that great. The last part is easily the best one, where Ahsoka joins up with Padme as they try to stop Aurra Sing from assassinating her. I always like seeing Ahsoka and Padme together. They have a very natural and wholesome dynamic. I like the tension throughout, with Aurra getting closer and closer to killing her target and Ahsoka trying to stop her. I also like that they play Leia's theme when they enter Alderaan to establish the Organas. Not much else to say here. It's a solid end to a fine arc. Not the most thrilling of the series, but it has some neat elements to it. This arc has Scottish lemurs.
Violence breeds violence. Jedi are no peacekeepers.
That's all you need to know. Jokes aside, this is one of those arcs that I forget ever happened in season 1 because of the subject matter it covers and how much more prevalent it is in later seasons, that being the negative effects of war and questions of morality. It sees our heroes, including Aayla Secura, the ultimate French Twi'lek queen, oh my god, crash landing on a planet where the inhabitants are pacifists and hate war, only for the separatists to invade and begin using a weapon to eviscerate all life except those of droids. I think out of all the arcs that tackles the theme of non-violence, this arc does it the weakest, considering the fact that we haven't seen or heard of any Jedi killing many living creatures, besides that monster Steven cutting off Jango's head. The only times the Jedi have used violence up until now has been on droids, so does old Lurman getting mad at the Jedi for protecting them, and his son joining in makes him so stubborn and annoying. Yeah, there's not much else to say past that. The action's pretty neat, especially in the second part. Senator Loch Duh is a fun villain voiced by George Takei, so that's epic. And while the delivery of the message is flawed, I do like that it foreshadows the path that Ahsoka would later take down the line. Yeah, that's really it. Fun, cozy, and Jesus, Aayla Secura could fix me. I'm sorry guys. This arc was fun. When people from this planet start mysteriously disappearing with no trace, the Queen of the planet calls for Jar Jar to investigate along with Mace Windu. I know I should hate this since it has two of my least favorite characters in all of Star Wars as two leads of it, but I don't know, it's fun. It's just one big homage to Temple of Doom. Jar Jar is a bit more competent here, and his annoying antics aren't as annoying. He's kind of like the short round to Windu's Indiana Jones, if Short Round was a man-child and Indy was boring. Yeah, Windu is still boring here with no arc to speak of, but at least he does some cool shit here, and the purple lightsaber is always welcomed. Also, Jar Jar got some duck pussy. I just want to put that out there. It's also so funny that not only did this haphazardly include Mother Talzin as the big bad here, but she loses because Jar Jar accidentally tripped on the pillar holding all the power she wants. Accidentally? Or purposefully. Oh well, fun arc, and Jar Jar now has his own harem. Feel bad, nerds.
What do you think you're doing?
Queen Julia.
Oh my god!
There was an arc that I think perfectly showcases the basics of this show. It's the Chris Solstice arc. Spanning from the movie to season 2, this arc sees our merry band of heroes trying to capture the planet of Christopsis from the hands of the Seppies. Everything you need to know about the Clone Wars for newcomers can be seen here. It provides fun stories and concepts with neat action along with some small but impactful nuances in the characters and themes. With that said, this is one of those arcs I feel is one of the more safe in the show. The first episode is decent with some nice banter between characters, a fun intense conflict, and some neat character development for Admiral Yularen of all characters. But the overall concept is pretty bare bones as it's a simple drop-off mission, and Trench as a villain isn't anything special. I like his design and voice, but he isn't one of the most threatening of side villains.
Foolish Republic scum! Your puny torpedoes are no match for my thermo shields.
Who are you talking to? But I think for the first canonical episode of the series, it's not bad. In hindsight, it does establish a lot to look forward to for the rest of the show. The relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan, the future leadership of the Empire, and the camaraderie between the clones. So it's a fine opener. The second episode is where this arc shines the most. With the droid army receiving intel of the heroes' plans, it's up to Rex and Cody to suss out who is the imposter amongst them. Yep, that's right. 10 years before anyone played a round of Among Us, the Clone Wars gave us a beta test of the game, complete with meeting calls, explaining tasks and whereabouts, sussy bakas, finger pointing, and even the imposter hopping out of a vent to get the jump on one of their crewmates, and being ejected when they get caught. Yeah, I really love this aspect of this episode, especially for what it sets up for things going forward with the series involving the individuality of clones and their views of the war. It isn't the most thematically subtle way they've expressed this theme of freedom, but I still think it's really engaging. Admittedly, the B-plot involving the Jedi and Ventress is the weakest part of the episode, considering that it really doesn't amount to anything for the story beyond introducing Ventress and the dynamic she has with Obi-Wan, and is more of an excuse to get the Jedi out of the main obstacle of the episode. But the rest of the story is great. Kevin Kiner's score is very tense, it's also very nostalgic because of the Lego game, and it's pretty funny. Good stuff. Hope the last part of this arc sticks the landing. It did not stick the landing. Okay, admittedly, I'm a little more harsh on this part of the arc because of its conclusion in the movie and how disconnected it is to the main story of it, but it's a pretty boring conclusion to this arc as it is. It sees our heroes, including Ahsoka now, trying to destroy a shield generator. How riveting. Okay, it's not the worst source of conflict this show has presented, but it's still pretty uninspired. And then we have Ahsoka, who just comes out swinging with her obnoxiousness and smug attitude. In hindsight, I see the intentions with her start as a character, and in some way, it does make her change more earned, but with how fast she starts to antagonize her superiors, I cannot stand her. Also, the animation is still very ass here. Like, look at these backgrounds. What is this? But banter between Obi-Wan and Anakin is still great. The scene where Obi-Wan stalls the leader is funny, and as much as I hate Ahsoka here, and I don't think she immediately earns a spot as Anakin's apprentice, I love the moment where her leitmotif comes in when Anakin finally accepts her as his Padawan. It's my favorite character theme in all of Star Wars, so to hear the first time it plays into her story, it kind of brought a tear to my eye. Overall, this is a good middle standard to judge the rest of the arcs for, as this one has one okay episode, one great episode, and one mid-fourth of a movie. I don't know, I guess. So a very standard arc, but for a starter arc for the show, you could do a lot worse. I always found the Holocron arc that propels Season 2 to be fun, but nothing entirely special. It's about hired gun Cad Bane stealing a holocron from the Jedi Temple and the Republic's effort to stop him. It's a really good arc to get people acquainted with the beloved bounty hunter, as this is canonically his first appearance in the Clone Wars and shows more of the flaws in his style, which makes him more of a believable hunter as a result. I also like the music used for him. His leitmotif sounds eerily similar to the Dark Knight's Joker, but I think it suits him for the agent of chaos he really is. Also, it feels very weird seeing him captain a separatist command ship and control a whole fleet. I don't know, I have no reason for feeling this way, but I just think it looks funny. I think the opening does a really good job of showing how flimsy the heroes can be, with Ahsoka nearly getting another one of her troops killed by disobeying orders. This is easily Ahsoka at her worst, and the arc wisely shows the consequences of her actions, and for once, we don't hate her for it. She got caught up in the heat of the moment and wasn't thinking clearly. I really like that she gradually changes in this arc from her impatient way of going about situations, like running to capture Bane in the second part, to seeing where she messed up and learning from them to help her win the day. We're slowly but surely getting to the all-timer Ahsoka we all know and love with moments like these. Besides those aspects, the rest of the arc is fine. The animation feels less polished in a few areas, mainly in episode 2, but does have some striking imagery in certain moments. I like the scene where Windu, Obi-Wan, and Anakin all try to enter Bane's mind. Did you know the show is very dark? It's very stupid how much the heroes let Bane get away. Like, why the hell are you just standing there as Bane gets onto his ship? Are you just tired from running, I guess? Also, how the hell did Bane get into that clone armor when he was still fighting the clones? He's not wearing a cloaking device like the ones he lends to his team in the Bounty Hunter arc, as we see Anakin smack off the helmet in the next episode. So, how the fuck? Overall, this has a few great moments, but nothing surrounding them is anything special. Even as a kid, I've always thought that the Malevolence arc was just simply good. Not one of my favorites because of its weirdly slow pace and more annoying Ahsoka moments, but I still think it's pretty fun. Admittedly, I have a lot of nostalgia for this arc because it was the subject of one of my favorite levels in the LEGO game, but I digress. This arc is pretty much a huge homage to the original trilogy, with the heroes trying to stop the big bad's big space weapon. The first episode is pretty tense, with Anakin and Ahsoka trying to find Plo Koon in a field of debris in the avocado system. I don't know, is that right? All the while, droids are sent out to hunt down all the surviving crew members. I do think the pacing is a bit too slow in the first half, and Ahsoka still has to be pretty irritating, but I really like Plo Koon and his willingness to save his band of clones.
Sergeant, why are you so certain no one is coming?
We're just clones, sir. We're meant to be expendable.
Not to me.
He's easily one of the most selfless Jedi in the Order, and he feels more human than any of the Order could ever be, especially with what's to come later in the series. The tension when the heroes are trying to escape the ion blast is great, and is pretty fun all things considered. On to the second episode. It's not nearly as exciting as the previous episode because Ahsoka just keeps bringing the excitement down with her bickering with Anakin, and again the pacing is pretty boring at points. But I like the ultimate solution to the ion cannon problem, and the banter with the clones is pretty nice. The final episode of this arc is my favorite, as we get more great Anakin and Obi-Wan chemistry and Grievous actually doing things. I said this in my lightsaber duels ranking, but I love that the first encounter Obi-Wan has with Grievous is just one big reenactment of their tete-a-tete in Revenge of the Sith. Fun stuff. This episode is also really funny, especially whenever the battle droids do anything. Speaking of droids, it's also hilarious how much Padme doesn't give a fuck about 3PO when he falls off the train, and it's even more funny that Obi-Wan has more of an emotional reaction when he loses him. Damn, that's rough, buddy. This episode does have some problems at the beginning with just repeating information we already know from the previous episode, like when the droid says to Grievous what the damage is on the ship.
Damage report.
We've lost both primary weapons. The hyperdrive has been disabled.
Impossible.
We've lost our primary weapon. The hyperdrive has been disabled.
And it still shows how utterly incompetent Grievous is in a larger universe that he was able to lose an entire battleship when Dooku's not around. But still, a pretty fun, inoffensive arc. I'm shocked that I like the virus arc more than I did as a kid. Maybe it's because... or maybe it's because it does a good job investing you in the plot. This arc sees our heroes trying to stop the stereotypical German-sounding mad scientist before he unleashes the blue shadow virus to the world of Naboo. Unfortunately, we still have Jar Jar, and he's the most annoying in this arc. You should be more motivated to help and pitch in. This is your home. Why are you still acting like a pussy? It's also just weird how we just skip over how the characters got out of the bunker without spreading more of the virus outside of it. And there are some pieces of dialogue here that make me question this whole universe a bit more.
I'm afraid you'll need some new droids to boss around, Jabo. The ones you lent us are pretty much toast.
Is this implying that this universe has real-world toast? Does the toast have blue dye to it be mixed with blue milk? I wouldn't be questioning this that much if I didn't happen to see real world food already in the series. I like the mad dash feel of the two parts, as the first part has them trying to stop these bombs, and the second has Anakin and Obi-Wan trying to save their friends and stop the spread of the virus. This was the arc where I really noticed the boost in quality in the animation, mostly due to the lighting just adding more to the scenes. Like the scene in the second episode where Anakin threatens the Doctor, The light is behind him, clouding his face in shadow, emphasizing the importance of this moment as this is really the first time we see Anakin grow a bit darker with his methods and sanity. Also, not that this is important, but it took me the entire arc to realize that the voice for the Doctor is Michael York from Cabaret. Not that it matters to anything, but I like that movie and I think that's neat.
You mistake my role, Jedi. My job was to manufacture a plague, not to cure it.
The word for my sex life now is nil. Or, as you Americans would say, plenty of nothing.
Overall, a pretty underappreciated arc and a pretty enjoyable one. Also, Anakin says poodoo at one point.
Oh, poodoo.
Great stuff. If there was an arc that showed the level of quality Season 1 had throughout its run, it would be the Nuke Gunray arc. In this arc, we see the Republic struggling to keep Viceroy Gunray in captivity. It's a fairly unique arc because we get to see different characters have their time to shine within these 3 distinct episodes. That being said, the start of it is all just rough. We have the first of a handful of Jar Jar centric episodes in the show, and yeah, it's just as bad as you're thinking it is. He continues to be a bumbling idiot only to get things right by accident. I do think the idea of Gunray and the droids being concerned about fraud Jedi is a fun idea, but I mean, Jar Jar of all people? Palpatine must have been pissing, shitting, and coming at the fact that Jar Jar was the one to foil his plans. My god.
Oh!
I also think it's funny how the robe is in the closet of Padme's ship, implying that Anakin and Padme have had their own adventures together in that ship, and Jar Jar just proceeded to destroy it. Yep, Jar Jar just destroyed the sex ship. He'll be the first to go. Overall, a bad start, but at least the next 2 episodes are pretty good. The second part sees Ahsoka and Luminara venturing to Coruscant to bring Nuke Gunray to the Senate for his war crimes, only for Ventress to set up a heist to get him out. This was really the first episode that truly showed so much needed development for Ahsoka, as she starts making hard decisions that lead to harsh consequences. It's also a great episode to develop Ventress more, as this mission is a test for her to prove she's still worth being Dooku's apprentice. I like the fight she has with Luminara and Ahsoka, and she does ultimately prove to be a formidable bald foe for the Jedi. And then from Ventress we move to Grievous, and from Ahsoka and Luminara we move to Nadar Veb and His Majesty Kit Fisto. This is the first of a few times in Star Wars where we actually get some level of development for Grievous, as the heroes journey through his lair and find statues of his victories and lightsabers of the Jedi he's killed, take it up as his trophies. I like that Dooku tests both his confidants as proof of loyalty and strength, as it gives way for some very memorable moments for these two, especially Grievous, as for once he feels very threatening. Basically, I see Dooku here as John Kramer, and he's just putting his Amanda and Hoffman through their own Saw tests. Yes, I would be the only one in history to compare Star Wars to Saw. We also see the toll the war has on a Jedi with Nadar, as we learn how grueling the trials must have been in this time for the Jedi if he is the result of it. And of course, Kit Fisto is a total badass. We get a sense of his history as a Jedi through Nadar. We see his strengths and weaknesses as a leader in war, and we see how capable of a fighter he is. That should be important because this is just pathetic. But seriously, this part of the arc is dark. So dark that even a Lego game couldn't escape that tone. I was severely traumatized by that as a kid. Ultimately, this is a very good arc where the strengths outweigh the very bad weaknesses. I've always had fond memories of the Younglings arc since I watched it as a kid. It's not the most deep or complex of arcs in the show, but it's a fun arc that does show more of a look at the Jedi's training. A group of younglings led by Ahsoka are sent to construct their own lightsabers while also battling with Hondo and his merry band of misfits. Hondo's here again, so you know it's good just from that, but we're also back to seeing him as an antagonist of an arc. I do prefer when we see him as a passive anti-hero, and we get that at the very last episode episode, but I won't lie, seeing a drunken Hondo flying in the air with the grace of ease is always a treat. I like the younglings enough, some get more focus than others, but they're easily rootable, and I like seeing them construct their own lightsabers. It's also nice continuing to see how far Ahsoka has come, even more than in the Academy, where here she basically gets to train 6 versions of her past self, each of them representing a trait from her. Pedro with his selflessness, Katuni with her bravery, Gnodi with her trust, Zab with his resourcefulness, Gunji with his patience, and Biff with his fearlessness. It also gives me immense pain knowing that most of them will be slaughtered in less than a year from now. This certainly feels a bit tonally inconsistent knowing how lighter in tone the youngling stuff is compared to the Grievous stuff starting the 3rd episode that's just swarming with death. I have no idea why Obi-Wan would tell Grievous that the ship will self-destruct when he was none the wiser about it. Are you sure you weren't smoking any of them death sticks before this mission? I said this before in my lightsabers video, but this episode contains what I consider to be the laziest and worst lightsaber duel in all Star Wars. It's literally just one clash. They clash one time and then they f**k off. And there are some line deliveries here that sound so wrong taken out of context.
Well, hello, girls and boys. We've been looking forward to meeting ya.
I need an adult.
I am an adult.
But overall, it's a nice light arc that shows Ahsoka more as a teacher and more lore for the Jedi. Grievous, you've been beaten by frogs. Don't let the lizards do the same now. There was an arc from season 1 that is both really fun and super underrated. It's the Pirates arc. This arc sees Anakin and Obi-Wan tracking down Count Dooku, only for all of them to be captured by pirates, led by our Lord and Savior, Hondo Ohnaka. Most of the praise of this arc goes to both the brilliant banter and dialogue, and Hondo being a delight. The first episode sees the duo giving chase to the Count, and it has some of the best banter these two have ever had. If you, like me, didn't fully believe these two's friendship in the prequels, this arc shows that these two are a match made in heaven for all I care.
How come I'm the one getting caught all the time? It doesn't look good. When you're a Jedi Master, you can make the plan. That's just it. How can I become a Jedi Master if I'm always getting caught? At least you're a master at getting caught. Very funny.
It gets even better when Dooku is involved as well.
They're planet-hopping thieves looking for a quick score. They have no interest in picking a fight with Jedi.
They are devious and deceitful, and most importantly, stupid.
It's a wonder you don't get along with them, Dooku.
And if there was anything I could level against this arc, is that I wish they did delve into more of Dooku and Obi-Wan's history, as we only have a glimpse of it in Attack of the Clones, and this show never really has them together long enough for them to have any talk about it. So I wish this arc had at least that for them. And how did Hondo and his men gain Dooku and Anakin's lightsabers? I genuinely have no idea. Also, the ending to the first part is confusing as hell, as it seems like they switched their drug drinks with non-drug ones, but then in the next part, they are captured and Obi-Wan says they were drugged. So, which one was it? Were they actually drugged, or is that just like, am I drugged? Am I drugged? I don't know. Anywho, this arc is so fun so far. Wonder what's next.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Fix-It.
Okay, this is yet another Jar Jar episode. Did you have fun with him before? I sure did. Kill me. Okay, to be fair, this is probably him at his most tolerable in season 1. He doesn't f**k up that much, and he does think up a good plan or two, but really, you could have replaced him with any other character and the story would not change. Also, he's indirectly responsible for killing a senator, but let's not worry about that. But I'm willing to put up with more Jar Jar if it means I get to hear Anakin and Obi-Wan making fun of the elderly for a few more minutes.
You control your protege's insolence so I can concentrate.
Anakin, what? Control your insolence. The Count is concentrating.
And let us not forget what this arc provided us. A true Star Wars legend if ever there was one, Hondo. To me, Hondo still remains one of the most likable and fun original characters that came out of this show, and is one of my personal favorite characters in all of Star Wars. His unconventional leadership to his men, his surprisingly respectful demeanor, the wonderful performance from Jim Cummings.
Oh yes, I'm rumbly in my tumbly.
Yes, that Jim Cummings, and the way he just carries himself through this war just makes him so iconic and a highlight to every episode he's a part of. Really, this arc is this high mainly because of him and the banter, and that's all I really needed. You know, After watching Godzilla Minus 1, I finally understood the appeal of kaiju media. They're not just monster mayhem extravaganzas, but they can be satirical, funny, emotional, and political in order for the material to stick with viewers more. So when I got to the Zillo Beast arc of Clone Wars, I was curious how I would feel about it since I never really cared much about it as a kid. This arc is silly as shit, and yet so much fun. Basically, this is Clone Wars' big homage to Godzilla, as the heroes unearth a massive creature called the Zillo Beast after bombing an army of battle droids. And after all that, all hell breaks loose, and our heroes must decide if they should preserve or kill this creature, as it's the last of its kind. I like that this arc poses a good moral dilemma, and we get to see each character come to their own conclusions. Palpatine's all gung-ho on killing it so they could use its scales to manufacture clone armor, while Padme wants to keep the creature alive out of mercy. And Anakin is split down the middle as usual. Seriously, I've never seen anyone kiss someone's ass so much as Anakin does to Palpatine. I do think the conflict is muddled a bit in the first episode, as the one providing the opposing side is Mace Windu of all characters. Yeah, this piece of shit. If someone like Ahsoka, Plo Koon, or even Yoda replaced Windu in this scenario, it would make more sense. But no, for some reason, this is when this fucker decides to be a pacifist. Also, the leader of the Dugs is named Doge. So the first episode is fairly standard and doesn't fully take advantage of this concept. And then yeah, they really make good use of this idea in the second half. It does take a bit of time to get to the good parts, but seeing this kaiju ready to wreck Palpatine's shit up and rampage through Coruscant is so much fun. It's so funny to think that this war could have ended right here if Anakin didn't cut the ship in time, or R2 was a few seconds late. You know those channels who make what if scenarios for different Star Wars moments and characters? I want to see a what-if story of what the galaxy would be if the Zillo Beast killed Palpatine here. This is probably the most f***ed Palpatine has ever been, next to catching the illness of death. Like, he pissed off a monster who's so intelligent that he even recognized his face. He only has so many places to go before the beast catched up with him, and worst of all, he's surrounded by people, so he can't even use his Sith abilities unless he runs the risk of getting caught. Man was kneecapped so hard, R2 had to carry his old ass to safety. And it's neat to see so many characters be more active in the story, like Palpatine, Aayla Secura, and Yoda for a change. And when the Zillo Beast dies, it's a pretty sad moment considering how he was the only one left and that he didn't ask for this. Overall, while slow on the uptake, when this arc hits, it hits hard. Also, I wanted to briefly talk about the episode that came before these two, called Bounty Hunters. This episode sees Anakin, Ahsoka, and Obi-Wan crash land on a planet of farmers who are being ransacked by pirates led by Hondo. So together, with a few bounty hunters fighting to protect their village, they all must train the farmers to fight to save their crops. This episode was attributed to Akira Kurosawa, the director of this episode's inspiration, Seven Samurai, and I think it's a really neat tribute to that legendary film and that legendary director. Hondo is entertaining as usual, and seeing some bounty hunters do some good for a change is a welcome shakeup. Though it is weird going forward to see Embo shoot at Anakin during the Clovis arc, when a few years ago they were fighting alongside each other and Anakin even felt concerned for his life at one point. And to bring up the elephant in the room, yes, Filoni and Jon Favreau would do the same story trope with an episode from The Mandalorian. I don't know why they did so, but it happened again. And truth be told, I kind of liked it here more than in Mando, as the threat felt more present and it actually was someone we knew, rather than a random red-eyed ATST. So overall, not one of the best episodes, but a great tribute to a classic. Good shit. I think I enjoy the Zygeria arc more than I think most people do. I just think it has a lot of great moments that build up Anakin's character and continue to progress his dark tendencies very well. When the Togrutan people are enslaved by the Zygerians, it's up to Anakin, Obi-Wan, who gets more fucked up here than any other arc, holy shit, Ahsoka, and others to try and set them free. Yep, we're dealing with slavery now, and you already know who this is about when it comes to that topic. All around, I think Season 4 is the darkest we've ever seen Anakin go in the series. And while Clovis holds his most dark moment, this arc is the real indication of how far Anakin's mental state has gone since the beginning of the war. If there's anything more triggering for Anakin, it's slavery. For obvious reasons, it's an area of his character that holds so much trauma and anger for him, and here's where all of it starts to really come out. From him crushing Obi-Wan's hologram device, to him holding his lightsaber against the Zygerian's neck, to him force choking the queen, he has no chill here, and it's very interesting to watch. I can only imagine how much of his mother and himself he sees in these slaves, and how far he would go to liberate them all. The only drawback to this is that it does take away focus from other characters who have more of a reason to be part of this mission. Like, I don't know, the Togrutan training under him? Yeah, strangely, Ahsoka has very little to do in this arc besides disguise herself as a slave and help her people in the final episode. I would think because this is her people that she would have a lot more to say or do here, but most of it is saved for the end of the arc, and even then she seems very low-key about the situation. That's ultimately my biggest issue with this arc, is the lack of Ahsoka in it. And yes, look how far we've gotten in this video already with my opinions on Ahsoka. Now I'm begging for more of her in these stories. Oh well, at least there's the episode after this arc, A Friend in Need. The episode where Ahsoka and Lux are tricked into teaming up with the Death Watch because Lux is turned on by the idea that another group wants to get revenge on Dooku. This episode is the Ahsoka fix I needed from the Zygeria arc, and I really enjoyed the very complicated relationship she has with Silco. Yes, Lux is voiced by the same guy who voices Silco. I was shocked too. It's a lot less toxic than Anakin and Padme, and less tragic than Obi-Wan and Satine, but it is still engaging because it's Ahsoka's first time making this connection as a person, let alone a Jedi. She firmly set herself to the Jedi's teachings, including forming no attachments or romantic relations. So I find it both very sweet seeing them bond, and sad knowing their differing paths and goals. This episode is also very special because this is the very first appearance of Bo-Katan as basically the big henchman to Pre Vizsla here. It's very exciting to go back and see where she started out, and especially seeing how she and Ahsoka started out together, knowing how intertwined their paths are. I wonder how they first met. Okay, she's cancelled now. But this was a fun episode, has one of Ahsoka's most badass moments with the quadruple beheading, and seeing Ahsoka interact with some of these characters, some of which will impact her arc going forward, was really fun. Also, this episode has one of the most depressing things I've ever seen. I don't know why I completely forgot that there were more than one episodes that are focused on Toydaria. I, for some reason, thought that the premiere was a solo episode, but then I remembered that it was connected to the first of many political episodes of Season 3. And honestly, this was a really good arc focused on the complexities of political warfare and the resilience of the Jedi. With that said, I much prefer one half of this arc to the other. The first part is a pretty standard politically based episode, with Bail Organa and Jar Jar Binks negotiating with the King of Toydaria to send supplies over to the Twi'leks on Ryla fighting the good fight. It's a decent episode to introduce young viewers to the politics of war, but nothing as severely impactful as, say, the Heroes on Both Sides episode later in the season. And the tone is pretty all over the place here, mainly due to Jar Jar. Once again, he's not nearly as annoying here as he is in other arcs that feel soured by his presence, but they really could just include someone like Padme to go on this mission with Bail. Hell, they don't even give a solid enough reason for why she couldn't be there. With that tone issue, it mainly has to do with the overall climax of the episode. All the bleak death we see as Master dies and his men get shot down feels less impactful because of Jar Jar's slapstick solution to all their troubles. I hope those supplies don't get completely ruined by the pods crashing hard on the ground. Thanks for that, Dick Tips. Also, the King's voice sounds completely different in the beginning of the arc compared to the rest of his appearances.
Perhaps you failed to pay attention to the Senate orientation. They should have explained that Toydaria is a neutral system.
But I have heard that a single Jedi equals 100 battle droids.
Did they put a filter on him and forget to take it out when it aired? Well, that was a fine start. What else is left? Yes. Out of all the episodes from the show, this is one I remember a lot from, and truth be told, this is one of the most underrated episodes of the whole series in my opinion. So in this episode, Yoda is sent out to meet with King Caduco, where he and his troop of clones have to face off against Ventress and Dooku's army of droids. It's a simple conflict in premise, but within the episode is one of my favorite depictions of Yoda I've ever seen. This version of Yoda is a perfect combination of the strategic warrior Yoda in the prequels and the wise, patient Yoda of the original trilogy. He has his call to action where he takes on a battalion of droids, but he notably doesn't start the fight with a lightsaber or even the Force. He uses his quick and smart mind to scatter around and have the droids attack themselves. He only starts using his lightsaber when he sees that his troops are in danger, and even then he's only on the defense with it. His offense is with the Force itself. Again, using the droids' flaws to destroy themselves. And when he officially goes on the offense at the end, it's in service to his troops once again as he trusts both himself and them to win the fight. We see him appreciate the beauty of this planet throughout the episode, and immediately when the fight ends, he just sits down and plays around with the wildlife around him. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the best scene in the episode. His talk with the clones. As this was the first episode aired for the show, the creators knew they had to have some hook to the show if it were to be successful. And thus, right from the jump, they introduced the theme of individuality for the clones when Yoda talks with them about their strengths and weaknesses, and how all of it makes them very different from one another, and thus, more than just the same face. It immediately provides us with the knowledge of the trust the Jedi and clones have between one another, and what to look forward to with the clones in this show. And to top it all off, we hear Yoda's theme kick in with the unique orchestrations of this episode in both this scene and the very end of the episode, where Yoda gains the trust and loyalty of the king. Just perfect. There really isn't much to complain about with this part of the arc. Although I will say if Yoda wanted to stop Ventress's escape, he could have just thrown the rocks at her ship's direction, but oh well. To be honest, this is one of the best premieres to a show I've really ever seen, and one of my personal favorites from the first season. It gives us some fun action, great character banter, a neat conflict, rich character moments, and one of the best depictions of a beloved character many thought were ruined by what came before. Also, the battle droids are very funny in this.
We're too big to fit in there. No, we're not. Watch this.
So overall, this arc is mainly carried by its second half, but man, what a strong finish. As a kid, I always thought the Boba Fett arc was one of my least favorites because I thought Boba was supposed to be cool. This arc doesn't make him cool. Very bad. Now that I'm an adult and I've been enlightened enough to know how mostly worthless of a character Boba really is, I find this arc to be pretty interesting. This arc sees the return of young Boba Fett, who's out for revenge against Mace Windu after killing his father on Geonosis. I've never rooted for an antagonist this much in the series as I did here because f*** Windu. He's a lazy, selfish, unempathetic prick and deserves to rot. Anyways, this arc actually did the impossible, making Boba interesting. From the first episode, we see how remorseful and scared this boy really is, and how despite his violent endgame, he doesn't want to do many of the things he has to in order to achieve that goal. It's also neat that Daniel Logan got to come back and voice him and the other cadets, minus this one who's voiced by D. Bradley Baker. Why couldn't Daniel voice him too? It also shows how manipulative Aurra Sing is and how she will do anything to get paid, even control a child's emotions. I also like that Hondo and her had a thing once, and that's canonically true that this guy f***s based on this comment.
Not mine, I take it.
I like how R2 turns into Space Kevin McAllister for an episode. Plo Koon and Ahsoka get to do more things together, even if her ultimate lesson is just the same as it was in Lightsaber Lost, of just being patient. Bossk is in this for like a scene or two. You really couldn't use him more. Also, how did Anakin not recognize Jango's helmet? Wasn't he the one that captured you in Attack of the Clones? And did I mention that Mace is an asshole? Because he is, and how fucking awful he treats Boba at the very end of the arc.
I'll never forgive you.
Well, you're going to have to.
Motherfucker, would it kill you to be a little bit kind? Fuck you, I hate you.
Anyway, so...
Good.
The Ryloth arc is easily the best arc from Season 1. And yet the ending blows. Okay, so this arc is dedicated to the Republic's efforts to liberate the planet of Ryloth from the Separatists' hands. The first 2 parts of this arc are super compelling. The first episode sees Ahsoka command her squad for the first time and ultimately fails, disobeying Admiral Yularen, getting a cruiser destroyed, and leading most of her men to die. This was the first real instance in the series where Ahsoka truly comes into her own as a character, and we see a real change within her. She's completely devastated at this loss, and because of that, she starts to question her leadership skills and whether or not she's worth being on the front lines of this war. Anakin, however, never loses faith in her, and with a few words of wisdom and an incredibly insane plan for victory, he's able to help her see the leader within her and win the day. This was the start of her journey to not just win the hearts of the viewers like me, but to become one of the greatest characters in all of Star Wars. And seeing Anakin look on in pride in his escape pod as he sees the results of Ahsoka's efforts, it's incredibly satisfying. Also, this Separatist leader is so down bad for Anakin that even Wat Tambor starts to question him on his apparent horniness to this man.
You admire Skywalker?
As a general, yes.
I am not gay. I have relationships with women and sex with men.
And I got news for you. That means you're gay.
Moving on to the second part. While slightly weakened by the slow pacing at the beginning, it's still very good. This episode sees Obi-Wan and his troops, including new clones Waxer and Boyle, try to free the Twi'leks from the ground level. Where this episode shines is in its heart. We see Waxer and Boyle befriend this little Twi'lek girl, who's just adorable, and lead her to her people. Seeing Boyle's heart heat up just a little bit by protecting this girl is so wholesome, and the ending is sweet as hell. I kinda wish this was the ending, TBH. Then we have the last part, seeing everyone's favorite Jedi Master Mace Windu as he tries to get the rebel leader for the Twi'leks, Cham Syndulla, and the Republic Senator Orphan Todd to come together and work on freeing Ryloth. All the characters here are boring. Windu is still a dick, he has one badass moment with the bridge, and now's the only scene in this episode where I don't feel dead. But other than that, whenever we focus on him, I eat. Cham and Orn are nothing special, and their rivalry is undercooked and basic. And after watching The Bad Batch, this solution ultimately meant nothing. Wat Tambor is also a total snooze fest. He has one fun gimmick with his voice box, and him being left behind is kinda funny, but he's no real threat, and I just don't care for him. There's some decent action, the droids have a funny moment in the beginning.
Look, it's RB-551. No wonder he got blasted. He's one of those older models programmed by a central computer. Not us. We're independent thinkers. Roger, 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 roger.
And a clone says hell again.
Isn't this the spot where they were massacred? Looks like it was a hell of a fight.
That was the most visceral reaction I got from this episode, but not much else is that good about this ending. It's a shame that the ending of this arc was as lame as I remembered, because the first 2 episodes got a lot better than I thought as a kid, especially with how it laid a new and engaging path for Ahsoka. Strong start and middle, poor finish. As I stated before during the Martez Sisters arc, when the show was announced for a 7th season, I was so ready. I'll take anything you got. Just serve it to me. And I felt like I had a good sliced pizza with some soggy mozzarella sticks on the side. But besides those episodes, we also got the Bad Batch arc, which is easily one of the most fun arcs of the series. In this arc, we see Rex and Anakin team up with Clone Force 99, a squad of defective clones who shoot first and ask questions later, as they go on this mission to retrieve an old friend. One once thought dead. Echo. Where this arc shows its strength is in its action and direction. This is easily the most dynamic cinematography and action direction we've seen in the show thus far, using a lot of clever editing and having many one-takes used. I like that we got more of a look at Rex and his faith in his brothers. Once he hears that there's a possibility that one of them could still be alive, he'll stop at nothing to see them back safe and sound. Well, mostly safe. I also like how much faith Anakin has placed in him to let him in on his little secret. That scene with Padme was very sweet, and especially after the Clovis arc, it was nice to have a scene where they show their love for one another, even if it wouldn't matter in a few weeks. Yikes. Also, I like how Obi-Wan responds to this, subtly showing how emotionally mature he's become with Anakin and his attachments. again until a few weeks later. Where I think the arc loses some of its luster is with the Bad Batch themselves. I mean, they're a fun group in this arc, and I like how they each have a quirk to them that makes them more unique. Wrecker being strong but scared of heights, Crosshair with a sharp shooting and no bullshit attitude, Tech with smarts and know-how, and Hunter being a tracker and f***ing boring. A lot of the infighting with them was pretty lame, especially when they got Echo back. Like, I know they would be suspicious about his loyalties, but there wasn't a moment where I thought, yeah, no, he's using them for the separatists, I guess. Echo himself wasn't all too interesting either, as it doesn't take him too long to start quipping back and forth with Rex, even when he looks like this. And while him joining the Bad Batch at the end works in a vacuum, it's an ending that doesn't work with me both because of how much the Batch didn't trust him before, and his overall uselessness in the team going forward. Like, seriously, if he just joined Rex here, nothing would change going forward. But overall, this arc was both great for a reintroduction into the series, and a great action arc for the show. The animation has bumped up significantly, the score is great, the new form of editing used for the intro works really well, the characters are likable, and there's some really great character moments like Anakin's interrogation and killing a trench, which makes sense since he was the first canonical villain Anakin faced at the start of the series, and this is his last arc playing a main role in it. Sure, it's not the most thematically rich arc in the series, but it's just really damn fun. Yeah, shockingly, the Clovis arc is actually really damn good. For all my bashing on the previous political arcs of this show, this arc is the reason why I say they are still worth watching in the show. As the name of the arc says, this story sees the return of Rush Clovis from the Geonosis arc, as he works with Padme to seize control of the banking clan, while Padme deals with conflicts within her secret marriage. This political arc from the show feels solely detached from the others because unlike most of them, the politics in this arc take more of a backseat and are merely just a backdrop to the true value of this arc. That being the examination of Anakin and Padme's relationship. I don't think it's much of a hot take to say that in the prequels, Anakin and Padme's relationship felt rather forced, shallow, and devoid of much interest or chemistry. There are many problems with it that felt unexplored in the movies, problems like dishonesty, general lack of focus for one another, differing levels of emotional maturity, and the fundamental lack of trust between each other. Also the fact that one party has to live by a code that basically tells the other to f*** off so he can chill with the boys. All these are explored here, and it makes their rather toxic relationship something really compelling to watch. It also helps that they make Clovis into an actually interesting character, with his tragic backstory and how he only wanted to help his planet and carve out his own legacy. In a way, his arc in this story is a microcosm of Anakin's journey throughout the franchise, as they joined a cause they saw as just and right at a young age, fell in love, then lost it, betrayed the people who trusted them for a more selfish cause that only destroyed them rather than helped them, and died with their legacy shattered across the galaxy. The only difference is that Anakin at least had someone to carry on the good that he had done, and would be remembered as a hero by them, whereas Clovis lost everything and had no one. And speaking of Anakin and Clovis, how come no one talks about their fight in the middle of the arc? Well, not really much of a fight, but more of an absolute beatdown for Clovis. It's basically all of Anakin's hatred, fear, anger, and darkness brought onto him by this war, finally brought out onto one person. This is Anakin's darkest moment within the show, as he completely loses control and lets out all of his emotions onto Clovis for what he was about to do to Padme. And by the time he gains back control, it's too late. Clovis is badly wounded, his secret romance is revealed to someone they don't trust, and it nearly shatters any hope and trust Padme had for him in the relationship. And I haven't commented on Matt Lanter enough in this video, but this arc holds one of his best performances as the character, brilliantly showing the emotional instability in Anakin throughout this one scene. To me, this is the most underappreciated arc in the whole series for what it does for this very complex relationship. It really shouldn't work because of my undying hatred for love triangles in media, but it does so much more than just that, and I just really enjoy it. There are some pacing issues, mostly at the beginning when Anakin hasn't entered into the picture just yet. I wish there was one more scene of Anakin and Padme talking together about their relationship at the end, mostly because we won't see Padme past this arc arc, except for a small cameo as a hologram in the Bad Batch arc, and it just feels weird that there wasn't a scene where they started to sort things out a bit more. But then again, they still had a moment at the end together that still showed their love for one another, so that's just more of a personal thing. I recommend rewatching this arc to get more of the nuances from it, and what it does for their relationship as a whole.
I peed on your wife, Robotnik. She's mine now.
What the actual shit? What? I come to make an announcement. Shadow the Hedgehog's a bitch-ass motherfucker. He pissed on my fucking wife. I'm pissing on the moon! How do you like that, Obama?
Would you believe me that one of the longest spanning storylines in all of Clone Wars involving a planet now made a household name due to a mostly good TV show that introduced one of the most culturally impactful icons in modern pop culture media started off in an arc about Obi-Wan's past love life? Yeah, that's how it happened. And it fucking rocks. Man, I forgot how good Season 2 was, and this isn't even the best arc from the season. So like I said, this arc is about Obi-Wan protecting the Duchess of Mandalore, Satine Kryze, who's also an old flame of his from a mission long ago, and wants to keep the neutrality of the planet ongoing. What makes this arc great is how much it does for Obi-Wan's character. Before, he was seen as one of the biggest supporters of the Jedi Code, and one who stood by the morals they laid out. With this arc, it finally strips that front away from him to provide a new angle to see him under. He was once in love with the now Duchess, and if things were different, they would have stayed together. But due to their different positions in life and one stringent code, this life they wanted was never meant to be. Episode 1 does a great job providing a sense of history with these two and giving them natural chemistry. It also shows the threat that it poses to Satine's pacifistic ways with Pre Vizsla and the Death Watch. It's hard for me not to see this twist coming anymore, that he is the leader the whole time, since he's intrinsically tied to so much that happens later, but it still does a good job providing the worst of what could happen to Mandalore if someone like him were to rule. The second episode is where we get so much rich history with Obi-Wan and Satine, seeing them bicker back and forth about their different political ideals and how intense they feel about each other adds so much to them. I love that we see Anakin's reaction to all of this, and it allows Obi-Wan an opportunity to be a bit more honest with his apprentice. And after multiple assassination attempts on the Duchess's life, and the villain getting the upper hand, we get to see both her and Obi-Wan finally be honest with each other in a powerful proclamation of love.
Alright. Had you said the word, I would have left the Jedi Order.
And Anakin's sudden killing of the Senator and the music swelling with a bit of the Imperial March makes this a very prominent and dark moment, and a moment that should feel successful. Episode 3 is a solid ending point for this arc. It sees the Duchess framed for murder and Palpatine urging for a Republic takeover of Mandalore. It's a little half-baked considering how fast it takes for Satine to prove her innocence, but seeing her win her neutrality back against Palpatine is pretty satisfying and shows the lengths that Obi-Wan will go to help her. Ultimately, this arc sets up a lot going forward, but it also successfully provides a relationship with rich history and compelling chemistry. All this means is that they're a better couple than Anakin and Padme.
Whoops, did I just accidentally a war?
I think the Obi-Wan undercover arc is one of the most creative concepts in the series, and one I find thoroughly entertaining. After faking his own death, Obi-Wan goes undercover as the bounty hunter who killed him, Rhaegal Hardeen, to gain information about Dooku's next plan to assassinate the Chancellor. If this arc has provided anything besides a very clever concept and fun action with bounty hunters like Chad Bane, it's a look into how far the Jedi will go to achieve victory. Not only did they have one of their own fake their own deaths, but they also tricked Anakin into thinking that his best friend was dead. This is when I believe Anakin really started changing his views on the Jedi. There have been moments that tested Anakin's faith in the Jedi, like when Ahsoka and Barriss were buried alive and Luminara stood by not looking for them, and when Ahsoka went missing and the Jedi left her to fend for herself. But this is the arc that turned Anakin from having a shaky belief that what the Jedi are doing is right, to fully believing that the Jedi don't trust him and that their cause is unjust. I mean, he nearly got Obi-Wan killed when he wasn't in the know, and it took Obi-Wan to desperately spill the beans by choking him out for him to know the truth. His interaction with Obi-Wan at the end also shows that even Obi-Wan is at fault for this, as he was the one to make the decision to keep him out of the loop, which fractured one of the only true bonds he has in his life. There really was no reason to mess with Anakin's emotions here. A selling reaction is not a good enough reason to do that, and it just further shows how much the Jedi have fallen. Really, this arc just shows how imbalanced Anakin has become from this war, and it really does test him on his attachments to people. Along with the great stuff involving Anakin and the Jedi here, there's some really fun and inventive stuff with Anakin and the bounty hunters. Admittedly, episode 2 felt a bit repetitive, as the plot of the first half is just to get a ship and everyone just backstabbing each other along the way. But the action with Chad Bane and Anakin was great and shows that even one of the most powerful Jedi wasn't enough to take him down or kill him. And then there's the box, which is just one of the most fun episodes in the series. It's basically Cube meets Saw meets Squid Game here, and I never thought we would get that sort of combination in Star Wars, but we did, and it's awesome. The puzzles are clever, you honestly start to root for these bounty hunters to win, even though the grand plan is evil, and Kevin Kiner just goes off here for no reason. Like, I don't know why the moment Chad Bane gets picked to be the leader goes so hard, but it does. There's also some nice fan service here, like how this was the first time Obi-Wan started using the alias Ben, and how Boba Fett is the one to start the prison riot. Though, that does lead into some of my issues with this arc. Some areas of it felt a bit rushed, like the prison riot itself is pretty standard and moves too fast for me. Same with Dooku's ultimate plan and Obi-Wan's eventual reveal to Chad Bane. There's also some minor plot holes here and there, like what happens to the voice enhancer in Obi-Wan's body after a while. I definitely don't like to ask if he had to pass that shit through, but there was the possibility. Also, what happens if less than 5 bounty hunters are left after the box? Your plan just fails, fuck ass. And also, how would Obi-Wan get all of his hair back after this, when the next arc happens fairly close to this one? Also, why does shaved Obi-Wan look younger than Anakin? Overall, this arc really set out to give us a story that feels both original and integral to many of these characters' journeys. Chad Bane's still a badass, Obi-Wan is more clever but flawed, and Anakin's beginning to truly change into the evil machine we all know and fear. Now, if anyone had any doubts that Ahsoka has ever changed since her debut, this arc is here to tell you to get off your soapbox, little Johnny, watch this arc, and then go to bed without supper for crying like a baby. So this arc sees Ahsoka captured by these big game Trandoshan hunters and has to escape from this planet, with a few other captive younglings and a very unspecial Wookiee. To me, this has been an arc that showed the amount of growth Ahsoka has gone through since her very humble beginnings. Unlike other situations, she's all on her own and has to hone in on her abilities and her leadership skills in order to survive. We see these Padawans as a sort of mirror to who Ahsoka was at the beginning. Brash, doubtful, and impulsive. So it's neat to see her use what she's learned from her time as Anakin's Padawan, as well as her own discoveries as a way to help these younglings escape. It also says a lot about the Jedi that these younglings went missing for so long, and yet they seemingly went forgotten by them. They were lucky to have someone like Ahsoka, who was lucky to have a master as compassionate and protective as Anakin, because in any other case, everything could have gone differently. It also says a lot that besides Anakin and Plo Koon, the other Jedi knew that Ahsoka was missing, and yet still didn't try hard enough to find her. To discuss the big mammoth in the room, yeah, we have Chewbacca in this arc, and honestly, hot take, you could just replace him with any other Wookiee and nothing would have changed. It makes us feel more attached to this mission because we all know very well who Chewbacca is, but it kind of strips a lot of the tension away from the action and also turns some of the focus away from what the arc really was about. But still, Wookiees fucking rock. Overall, this was an arc I found more appreciation for as time's gone on, especially considering what it does for Ahsoka. We're now starting to see her grow more and more independent, and also see how attached Anakin truly is to her. It was a really good end to Season 3, and a perfect halfway point for Ahsoka's journey in this series. Also, it took me a bit, but I recognized the voice of Jinx as the voice for Kung Lao in the latest Mortal Kombat games.
Chew on that, Padawan. Then rest. You'll need your strength. Double date with Liu Kang and Kitana?
In your dreams, Kung Lao.
A simple no would have sufficed.
It's not really that important, I just thought that was funny. The Citadel arc is easily one of the more fun arcs of the series. When Jedi Master Even Piell is captured by Separatist forces and brought to a fortress called the Citadel, Anakin, Obi-Wan, and many of our other heroes try to infiltrate the fortress to break him and a familiar face out. I'm always going to be a sucker for a good old heist prison escape story, and this I feel like is what kind of started my love for them. It has some really high stakes as Even Piell and Tarkin have one half of these hyperspace coordinates that will be vital for any side who has it. The many areas of the Citadel have some neat traps and obstacles. There's some great tension throughout with some characters we know could easily die here. There's some nice emotions towards the second half with characters like Echo dying, and Even Piell getting mauled by a saber-toothed looking ass creature, and him giving Ahsoka, the person who wasn't supposed to be a part of this mission in the first place, the most essential information in this mission. At first, I thought it was weird that Anakin would not have Ahsoka on this mission, as with how heavily guarded and fortified the structure is, wouldn't it be good to have someone as quick and nimble as her on board to help you out with a tight pickle like that? But then I remembered that not one arc before this, Ahsoka died. So this was when Anakin really started thinking more about the possibility of death for the people he loved and cared about within this war. So if he could keep her alive as long as possible, he would do that. I just still think it's weird that she had to lie about it and be validated for her lie at the end, just to have Ahsoka convince Anakin of her own accord and nothing would have really changed. Regardless, I really enjoy this arc. It's fast moving, has some neat action, especially in the third episode, and the interactions between Anakin and Tarkin allow for some moments of clarity for us to see how Anakin views the Jedi's methods for achieving victory. There's really not much else to say, it's just a really damn fun arc and shows how to do it right, Disney. Also, nothing to me in this show up to this point gave me more chills than when the Imperial March plays when Anakin and Tarkin give each other a handshake. Let me reiterate, a handshake gave me chills. This show is on another fucking level, bro. Now, I was sort of debating combining this arc with another that comes straight after it, but I decided to keep it separated from this list mainly because their plots are distinguishable enough to which they feel like their own separate stories, and each arc highlights a specific character. And with that, this arc gives me an opportunity to really talk about Asajj Ventress as a character. In regards to characters within this show, and even in the grander Star Wars universe, Ventress is kind of an underrated character for me to talk about. When we discuss Clone Wars, we usually bring up characters like Ahsoka, Anakin, Rex, the Domino Squad, Obi-Wan, and even a character like Maul who was introduced far later into the series than her, who goes as far back as the original Clone Wars movie. But I think her arc in the show is a favorite of mine. Ventress has struggled with forming her own identity, and has been bounced around so many forms of life that she doesn't know where exactly she belongs anymore. She was first taken away from her family by pirates, who were then killed by the Jedi, who then took her in based on her abilities with the Force. Yet, her old life caught up with her, as pirates killed her master, and so she went ahead and killed her past, thus forging a new life with the dark side and her new master, Dooku. She felt comfortable channeling her anger towards the life she thought wronged her, that when she got too comfortable, her new life was completely taken away from her, and so she had nothing but a life she never really knew with the Night Sisters. Through her vengeance and plotting, including gaining a pseudo-apprentice, her identity was looking far too identical to the one of her old master, an image of hate, jealousy, and anger, which leads to this arc for her. This is really where Ventress's arc comes to a climax, as she goes back into the one life she has left and tries to settle in with it. It's the only life that would give her some semblance of peace. And yet, we all know the pattern by now, and her past mistakes come crashing down on her, her family, and her identity. Though it's really one big battle episode, I think this first episode does a lot to further explore the Night Sister culture with how they approach leadership, battle strategies, and really how much of a grudge goes a long way for them, with how Mother Talzin tortures Dooku with her voodoo magic. Really seeing Dooku as most pathetic and desperate state in the series was the highlight of this episode. Like, dude was going through hell here, and literally has to beg for Grievous, of all people, to save him. Also, I don't know how I was fine going forward in life after seeing these zombie Night Sisters in action. And with the deaths of the Night Sisters at the end, Ventress really does have nothing left. Admittedly, my issues with this episode, and really this arc as a whole for the show, is that I wish we got an extra episode to really dive deep into the sisters themselves, as we just quickly go from Ventress's Night Sister baptism to Grievous's attack on the witches. Like maybe an episode that could have gotten us more attached to characters like Karis and Luz, and even set up old Daka and the voodoo magic used in this episode. And also the fight between Ventress and Grievous is still pretty mid. I still carry the same opinion I had with the lightsaber video. But moving on to the next part of this arc, we see Ventress finally on her own, still trying to find her place in the galaxy, when she gets a bounty hunting job organized by Boba Fett, where they had to transfer cargo from one side of a violent planet to the other. Along with this episode having some really good action direction and fun character appearances like Dengar, voiced by Simon Pegg, comes Ventress's true rebirth. She was just a lonely wanderer when getting this job that she had no interest in, only for her to realize that this finally gave her the opportunity to truly find herself in all of this. Through her mission, she was able to confront her past, start to heal, and gain a new, fresh sense of independence. She's finally found a life of her own, and as she puts it, she now has a future. Ventress's arc throughout this show is one of solidifying one's identity and gaining independence. She was shaped into a person by people she served, yet she didn't know how to do that for herself until the time came. She easily has one of the most complex arcs in the show, and one that I think should be recognized more for the richness that it has. Ah, hell yeah, here comes the red logo, bitches! I don't think there was an arc that got people more excited, excluding the Siege of Mandalore, than when Darth Maul returned. We were finally gonna see this badass, mostly silent character from Phantom Menace, one might say the best part about that movie, get fleshed out and finish his rivalry with Obi-Wan in this show. And truth be told, I don't think there's ever been a character reintroduced with such glory in Star Wars than this petty fucker. While yes, the oversaturation of him in Star Wars media has become more rampant since his impactful return, but dude, this still rocks. The build-up to his eventual reveal is tense and engaging. When both Dooku and Anakin describe what they sensed as sinister, I got chills. Like, his return is so massive and dangerous that it shakes both the Jedi and Sith to their core with just the vibe he gave off. Admittedly, the first episode is just a massive setup to when we eventually see him, but even then, the fact that he's been hiding on a planet this threatening and repugnant does a lot to tell us how powerful he is to survive all these years under these conditions. And then we finally see what he has become. Damn. Time got hands. He's completely gone in the mind, only thinking and speaking about his pain and suffering. He's made a new body that's both terrifying and unstable, and it's heavily implied that he's been eating any and every creature that has been sent down to him, including humanoid creatures, basically saying that he is a cannibal now. This is a kid show. He's done so much to survive only because he's fueled by his hatred for one person. Eventually, we see him return to a somewhat normal state, but still holding on to his pure, agonizing need to see vengeance on Kenobi. If this arc, and specifically this episode, does anything, it is to show how much of a threatening presence Maul has become. And with the help of his brother, Savage, there's so much to worry about going forward in this war. And of course, I have to talk about Sam Witwer. He's already been a part of this universe before, voicing the Sun in the Mortis arc, and voicing and performing as Starkiller in the Force Unleashed games. So he's already proved himself with handling his own takes on original Star Wars characters really well. But he had the opportunity to now take that talent and apply it to a pre-existing character, and one that many people were a fan of. And it also helped that with how underdeveloped he was in that movie, he and the writers can basically shape him into whatever they wanted. And so, for him to play him as like a child throwing a galaxy-wide fit only because of one man who humiliated him, I think that was an extremely brilliant move, as it makes him so much more intimidating, and later we'll find ourselves sort of sympathizing with him with the true reason of why he acts like this. And while that praise is partly due to the writing, I think it was Sam's performance that shaped him into an even more iconic character, and his performance might be my favorite in the whole show, and some of the best voice acting I've ever heard. And this arc comes straight after the Ventress arc, so we get to see her get more involved, as it makes sense since she has a score to settle with Savage. It complements her arc while providing a lot more engagement to what comes next, and seeing her rescuing Obi-Wan was nice to see, even if it doesn't make much sense for Obi-Wan to trust her immediately, since their last encounter had him being choked by her, and not in the way he probably likes. But seeing Maul's ferocity as he duels Obi-Wan and taunting him about killing his master in front of him shows that this man is so pissed at this guy that he will not hold back by bringing back his opponent's past pain until he has completely broken him. And obviously, he won't stop there. Maul's return was badass. It was a reintroduction that also served as a true introduction to his character and paved the way for so much more to come. It was a bit slow to get there, but it really was one of the most thrilling arcs in the series, and the start of one of the greatest villain arcs in all of Star Wars. If I'm being honest, I think the Deserter arc is probably the most underrated arc in the whole show. This arc does a fantastic job at exploring characters on both ends of the war, and are kind of a perfect foil to one another. The arc sees our heroes going to save Jedi Master Koff from the hands of Grievous, and hopefully capture him in the process. In his first appearance in Season 2, the first part where they head to Koff's rescue does a great job at reintroducing us to Grievous's menace, and honestly, should have probably been his true introduction in the show based on how this episode frames him. He's imposing, ruthless, and skilled with a blade that, for once, it makes him feel like he can genuinely take on the Jedi with an iron fist, whereas the rest of the show completely fails to make him more than just a coward. We see why he's so subservient to Dooku, and we buy into his hatred for the Jedi. This feels the closest we'll ever get to Gendy's Grievous in the show, and yeah, an episode entitled Grievous Intrigue makes Grievous intriguing. The next episode sees our heroes continuing their search for Grievous, while Captain Rex gets shot and needs medical attention. He does get some from a deserted clone. Yep, we finally get a Rex-centric episode, and it's a very fitting story for him. Where Season 1 had an episode that looked at the individuality of clones as a potential problem for our heroes, here we see how one could find peace in their freedom. Where the first episode examines Grievous and his purpose in the war, this episode takes a look at Rex's role in all this. He's given a mirror to look into with Cut Lawquane as a man who found a life away from the war. This gives Rex a chance to view himself outside of his original programming, and that he can make his own choices in his life because despite being a clone, he's still a thinking, feeling human being. We see him briefly question his life in the war, but for him to realize that his brothers are his family, as Cut's wife and kids are to him. Admittedly, you'd have to suspend your disbelief a bit to have this, because the war has been going on for like a year at this point, and in that time, Cut not only had a change of heart, but found a wife and had kids that act more mature than they probably should at that age. But I'm willing to let go of that logistical error if it means we still get this truly fantastic arc. We haven't quite yet hit the peak of clone-centric arcs just yet, but judging from the high bar this arc set, you know we're about to eat good from here on out. And briefly before moving on, let's talk about the episode that came right after this. lightsaber lost. In a way, this episode kinda can be part of this whole arc as well, as it examines the strengths and weaknesses of one character of the series, but it feels separate enough from the whole story of the arc that it's more singular as a result. But with that said, I really love this episode. It's a great deconstruction of Ahsoka's flaws that everyone had about her at this point in the series. Her brashness, arrogance, obnoxiousness, and seeming immunity to scrutiny and ridicule are all addressed here, with the inclusion of Jedi Master Taras Anube. His calm, patient, and relaxed demeanor is a great contrast to Ahsoka's headstrong abrasiveness, and in the end, she grows and changes into a better Jedi, but more importantly, her own individual. It also subtly foreshadows how the Jedi have abandoned their mission to help the people in need, when the lady who stole Ahsoka's lightsaber says, "I have a lightsaber, and that makes me as powerful as a Jedi," implying that life in the underbelly of Coruscant has been awful to these people, that violence is the only way the Jedi will ever respond to them. This episode does a lot and still remains very entertaining throughout. Gotta love that. I never gave the Order 66 arc of Season 6 much credit until now for what it really did for both the show and the entire franchise. It reinvented the events of Order 66 to make more sense and gave all the clone characters from the show an even more tragic vibe to them. After Tup intentionally killed a Jedi, it's up to Fives to uncover the mystery as to why he did it and what was the cause. The reveal that every clone from before birth had an inhibitor chip placed in them so that they would take in any order given to them, including one that would kill the Jedi, is so haunting, knowing that they never really had free will and were really only bred for war. And seeing one of those clones make that discovery, only for them to die with that information, is heartbreaking. Fives was always one of my favorite clones, and this arc really brought his character full circle. From a clone looking to fight in the war to prove his worth, to being the only clone able to stop the fight, only for corruption to win again and to die by the hands of his own brothers. And to hear both Tup and Fives say that they're finally free, and that the nightmare of Order 66 is finally over for them as they pass on, it's both extremely emotional, especially when we've known Five since Season 1 and have seen his substantial growth, and it says a lot about the clones, how each of them know about the Order, calling it the mission and describing it as the nightmare is chilling. I can only imagine this was the same thought going through Heavy, Hardcase, and so many other clones' head just before they died. That they wouldn't be around to see the mission completed, and how freeing it all feels. And this arc also continues to show how complacent the Jedi have become. They now have knowledge of clones turning against them and an inhibitor chip within their minds, and they just brush it under the rug as if it's not a problem, or at least they think they can handle it at another time. As much as Palpatine and the clones are responsible for the physical downfall of the Jedi, they were slowly destroying themselves way before Palpatine even gave those orders. And we'll see other examples of that later, but this arc just shows how far they've already fallen since the start of the war. This arc really is one of the most impactful in the show, and while it is a bit slow in the first half, I still find it unbelievable that Admiral Trench was able to survive this. This is still one of the most engaging arcs in the series, and hell, it gets points for having a droid being one of the main characters and not being useless or annoying. If there was a single arc in this show that played around with so many story ideas, genres, and tones, it would be the Geonosis arc. The longest arc in the whole show, spanning 5 episodes in Season 2, this arc focuses on the heroes trying to take back command over Geonosis. This was one of those arcs I was most excited about, even if I knew the start wasn't the greatest. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise you that in an arc that has a D-Day-esque battle, zombies, and body invasion horror, it starts with an episode focused on Anakin getting jealous of Padme over her old lost love, because I surely was. It's not an awful start, since I think Anakin and Padme have better chemistry here than in the movies, and the opening is cute, But then it becomes the good old jealous boyfriend love triangle trope, and it's pretty boring. It takes a spy espionage approach, but it never really does anything fun with it, and Clovis is just a bland simp for Padme here. So that episode was lame. I wonder how the rest of the arc will turn out.
Good thing those bugs can't aim.
Yeah, pretty fucking well. Yeah, right from the second episode, you're thrust into the action. It's clear how this episode was inspired by D-Day and the filmmaking of the opening of Saving Private Ryan. This episode makes winning this battle absolute hell to beat. Ki-Adi-Mundi is lost from the rest of the team, Obi-Wan is injured from the crash, and Anakin, Ahsoka, and Rex are trying their damnedest to destroy this fortress, blocking their way to the breaking point. However, this episode isn't afraid of having some levity, as Anakin and Ahsoka pull Legolas and Gimli and have a game of counting how many droids they destroy. And it's wholesome that at the end, Ki-Adi-Mundi says he was keeping count too, and won the game. He may also be an asshole for what he does later on in this series, but he's pretty chill here. Also, this is where I realized that the creators really did try to make this arc as cinematic as possible with how they use the camera. Having a dolly out of subjects, and even having a pretty awesome tracking shot of Anakin and his team facing down some Geonosians and droids. Banger opening, and the next episode continues the streak, with Anakin and Luminara taking down some droids, while Ahsoka and Barriss Offee try to take down the whole droid factory. This episode really puts an emphasis on Anakin and Ahsoka's relationship, as we see Anakin start to get very concerned when Ahsoka is sent off to blow up the factory, while he fights on the front lines, in contrast with Luminara and Barriss' relationship that holds a lot of trust, but not much in the way of love. And when Ahsoka and Barriss blow up the factory with them still inside, we see how attached Anakin is to Ahsoka that he wouldn't abandon her to the rubble of this factory, whereas Luminara is already prepared to let go of her Padawan if this really is the time. If this arc provides us with anything, it's Anakin's form of attachment, and while loving, also how unhealthy it is, both with Padme and Ahsoka. It beautifully foreshadows both Ahsoka's and Anakin's decisions later on in the series, and how far removed most of the Jedi are from attaching themselves to anyone. Okay, but what about some fun stuff? In the fourth episode of the arc, we see Anakin and Obi-Wan venture into a catacomb to search for Luminara, where they encounter a Geonosian queen who can raise the dead back to life. Yep. Zombies. They even say what they are in the episode themselves.
No, there's something else going on here, and these zombies are connected to it.
As a massive zombies fan myself, I was surprised that this episode maintained the horror-centric nature of this genre, with confined spaces and grotesque imagery. Not much else to say about this episode, it's just really cool that we got zombies in Star Wars.
Come now, the nose or the ear, which do you think will enter?
I think the nose.
Finally, with the final episode, they go full-on invasion of the body snatchers on this motherfucker when a zombie worm infects one of the clones heading on a spice mission, and he spreads more of those worms onto the ship, infecting the rest of the clones, and Ahsoka and Barriss are trying to stop them. As much as I love the way this episode uses this concept, I also love that it blends in with some truly fantastic character moments. We see Ahsoka and Barriss question the Jedi's status in the war, and what will come next for them after it's all over. We also hear the Imperial March a bit when Ahsoka talks about Anakin's feelings on peace.
Let's just say my master will always do what needs to be done. I'm not even sure how peacetime will agree with him.
Speaking of Anakin, we finally get a moment of him embracing a bit of his darkness as he interrogates Poggle the Lesser. We hear the Imperial March again as he walks down the corridor to his cell. His voice becomes deeper as he tells the guards to leave them. He uses his robotic arm to smack Poggle to the side, and he uses the Force to choke the information out of him, all while having a sinister glare in his eyes. All this is punctuated by how he responds to the rest of the Jedi when they ask him how he got that information from Poggle, when he says, "There wasn't time to get the rest of you," implying that he knew exactly what he was doing, and that he was in full control of his actions. The dark side is already infested in him, just like the worms have done to these clones and to Barriss, a slow-acting poison that will eventually kill him. It's perfect that this is the point where we finally see Anakin start to go off the deep end, because all this is happening to the people that he loves. And knowing how Luminara reacted to him trying to save his Padawan, he knew that what he had to do was something he had to do alone. I love the stuff involving the worms, but this is the moment that made not only this episode, but the whole arc for me. And this episode capitalizes on all this with the ending, having Ahsoka make a difficult decision on killing the worm or Barriss along with it. While she was lucky to have saved everyone, she also knew that that won't always be the case. Danger will always come to her friends, and so it's up to her if she's willing to sacrifice the ones she loves in order to save everyone else. And unlike Anakin, who's stuck in his emotions and willingness to save everyone, Ahsoka isn't so sure that that's the right way to go. The more I think about this arc, the more I find value in its treatment of its characters and how it does it in unique and exciting ways. While the start of it is rough, it's ultimately worth it to see some truly fantastic growth for these characters. To me, the Night Sisters arc was when the show truly became phenomenal. Up until this point in the show, we solely followed the heroes of the show and rarely ventured elsewhere. There were hints of the show presenting us with views from the other side, like Heroes on Both Sides and Lair of Grievous, but we didn't have an arc where the villains were the main focus. That was up until this arc. After Ventress was left to die by Dooku, she returns home to her kin on Dathomir, the Night Sisters, where she starts plotting her revenge and breeds a new ally. This is where the Clone Wars starts to really throw themselves into the dark material it's been building up to since the beginning. There are very brutal deaths here, lots of torture, and the themes of loyalty leading to one's downfall establish a tone never really struck by the show up until this arc. I love that we get to focus on Ventress, as she was definitely a character who needed more to do in the show besides being a femme fatale assisting Dooku. We see why she aligned herself with such evil, we understand how powerful she is, and we learn about her relationship with her kin. The scene where Dooku betrays Ventress tells you so much about their relationship. This is something Dooku never wanted. He saw so much potential in his apprentice and hoped to gain enough power together to kill Sidious. When Ventress calls him, he calls her child, almost like he means it, that she is like a daughter to him. And Corey Burton's performance of the moment he abandons her provides a sense of hurt from this character never seen before. And for Ventress, we see how this was just another mentor or father that has left her. She's lived a life of loss, and to see that Dooku would forsake her means that she has nothing left but a life she's never really known. The Night Sisters as a whole is a very fun concept. A neutral band of dark side users who use sorcery and magic to establish their place in the galaxy is something I find very interesting and unique for Star Wars. It also establishes the world of Dathomir very well as a mostly female-dominated world due to the magic they have that the men don't, and how it split the planet into two halves with the males on one side and the females on the other. And speaking of the males, the second episode introduces us to one of the most menacing characters in all of Star Wars, Savage Opress. As a kid, I was extremely excited to see someone who looked like Darth Maul in action, and he probably fucked me up the most out of any character from the show. It's a little bit unfortunate that his character was reduced to Maul's side piece later on in the series, but I'm happy we at least had an arc where he truly did shine. We first see him as a respectable, compassionate, strong warrior who looked out for his brother. But after some brutal tests from Ventress and some makeover juice from the Night Sisters, his strength overshadowed his respect and his compassion. Now we get to truly know who Savage is in this arc. A brutal, cold, emotionless killer with no control. He is an animal that can never be tamed, and the sound team even accentuates this perfectly with how his lightsaber sounds. We all know how it sounds when a lightsaber is activated. With Savage, it sounds like this. Almost like the roars of a wild lion about to pounce. This last episode just shows the cruelness of the Sith at its fullest. There's no room for compassion, forgiveness, or love. You are a pawn in one way or another. Your strength is only measured by your ferocity and your hunger for power. you must learn fast in order to survive. The final fight between Savage, Ventress, and Dooku shows that the Sith are ruinous and loyalty is just a funny word to them. It was also nice to see Savage with all of his horns for a little bit at least. This arc is one of the show's most dark and unapologetic. It takes characters in completely different directions and makes you sort of empathize with them. Even someone as evil as Dooku didn't want any of this to happen. It does have some drips in the tone that feel pretty forced whenever Anakin and Obi-Wan are around, but besides that, it has great action, some of the most brutal scenes in the show, created a great new character, reinvented others in compelling ways, showed us a side of the war that began to make things come full circle, and sets up the return of one of the most badass characters in all of Star Wars. To me, whenever any of the Domino Squad members are in an arc for the show, I know it's going to be a banger arc. And thus, their intro arc is one of those arcs. It's one of the longest spanning arcs from the show, with 1 episode in Season 1 and 2 episodes in Season 3. It focuses on the clone team called Domino Squad from their humble beginnings to their first real mission to the battle for their own home. I love that this arc starts and ends on Kamino, as we now see how far they've come to get to where they are. The first episode sees their training from cadets to troopers. We get a good sense of everyone on the team, minus Droid Bait, who is easily the most forgettable of them, so much so they die so unceremoniously in the next episode. But we know Echo is the teacher's pet, always following orders to a T, Fives is impatient and wants a fight, Heavy is the leader having doubts about his squad, and Cut Up is a little shit stirrer, and also Irish-Scottish for some reason.
They are so much better than us. Knock it off.
It's satisfying to see the squad finally work together and grow as a unit, and seeing Heavy give 99 his badge is powerful and wholesome, especially knowing what's about to happen next. Although, it is a bit far-fetched to say that no other clone squad has ever thought of this idea of shooting and climbing up the guns. Like seriously, no other unit thought of this idea? Banger start and it only gets better from here. Yep, Rookies. The episode where the clones say hell twice.
What the hell was that? I got one! Sorry, Echo, I junked that one. Like how you did.
In this episode, we see the squad work together to stop a battalion of droids from taking over a Republic moon base. I've always loved this episode, and it was an early indication of the levels of depth the show will go to analyze the clones in both their individuality and their unity. We see the squad get torn apart as well as come back together to win the fight. Heavy is the main star here, and it hits hard when he decides to sacrifice himself for his team. It's also very funny at points like when the droids try to act as clones and how the clones turn that shit back on them at the doors. Even advanced droids are dumbasses, gotta love that. And if this episode showed the clones act as a unit, the next episode shows what it looks like for them to act as one. In this episode, we see the Jedi and the clones working together to rid the Separatists from taking over their home. This is easily one of my favorite episodes in the show, as we see how the clones work when their home is being threatened. They are fully united and won't stop until they know that their home and their brothers are safe. We see not just the rest of the squad act, but also Rex and Cody, the cadets, and even 99 work together to accomplish their mission, and it shows the sacrifices they would all make for them, especially with 99. I think to me, 99's death is the first really impactful death in the series, as he finally got his chance to be a soldier and fight for his brothers. He was inspired by Heavy to put it all on the line and to do what he can to win the fight. It shows that guns and muscles don't make a good soldier, but it's their hearts for others that shows that. And in the end, we see the culmination of the squad's arc when Fives and Echo are awarded the rank of ARC Troopers. From fighting amongst themselves to working together to win the day, if this arc has shown us anything, is that a clone's strength is greater when they work as one. It shows them at their best, and is a great juxtaposition to what we will be seeing next. It introduced some of the best and most important characters in the series, some of the best action of the show, and holds some of the most emotional moments in all of Star Wars. All in all, it's a classic. God, I never gave season 6 enough credit. For how short it was, it might just be the most consistent season of the show, with no episode being bad in my opinion. And it all culminated with this, what was the final arc of the show, the Force Ghost arc. In this arc, we finally see Yoda as the main focus as he travels around the galaxy learning more about the Force after hearing the voice of Qui-Gon Jinn calling out to him from the dead. I think after watching The Last Jedi, I've kind of become a sucker for Star Wars stories that explore more about the nature of the Force and how it is challenged by certain characters. We'll see one arc later on this list that does this the best in all of Star Wars in my opinion, but this arc really shows the true strength it does have. We already know about Force Ghosts in Star Wars, as they've been a staple of this franchise since the very beginning, but this arc finally explains that it's not something that all Jedi have by default, as something they learn. Rather, it's an ability only a few select Jedi know and understand. Hence why we don't see characters like most of the Jedi who died during Order 66 come back as spirits of the Force, because it was only recently discovered by the dead. Seeing Yoda of all characters learn to strengthen his connection with the Force to acquire this ability is an absolute treat to see, as we haven't seen Yoda challenged that much in the show. So it's so refreshing to see it happen here, along with having the best visuals in all of the show. The worlds that Yoda encounters here are so beautiful, majestic, and distinct from one another, and they all represent a part of the Force that Yoda continues to learn. Morban's the dark side of the Force, Dagobah is the side of the light, and the Nebula is the great equalizer. It also challenges Yoda with coming to terms with the future, as he now knows that the war has changed the fates of the galaxy and the Jedi for the worse, the Sith have already won, and that the Chosen One will be their end. And yet, he chooses to still save Anakin at the end of the arc because he, of all characters, knows that the future is constantly moving, and that what will happen soon will change later. For lack of a better way of saying it, he's choosing to be selfless instead of being selfish. This arc also has some really nice fan service here that adds instead of distracts. Yoda asks Anakin to help him escape in a rare moment of genuineness from Yoda. And it's also funny to see Yoda pretty much call Anakin a f***boy because he knows how to disobey orders. Yoda goes to Dagobah as the first planet of his test, which makes his exile to there in the prequels make more sense since the Force there is so pure. And we get the canon reveal of Darth Bane, played by Mark Hamill. Gee, took him long enough to be a part of Star Wars. Which shows how corrupt a person could become from the dark side's temptations, and how their legacies are meant to be forgotten. This arc is truly one of the most fascinating in the show, and while it does suffer from some mild pacing issues towards the start, it doesn't take away from the sheer wonder of this odyssey. To me, the Mortis arc is probably one of the boldest arcs that the Clone Wars has ever produced. It's strange, mysterious, ambiguous, and yet so creative, interesting, and challenging that for it to be a part of a kid's show, I have to admire it. In this arc, Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka are brought to a world not known to the galaxy, containing the purest essence of the Force with the three gods of this world: the daughter, the son, and the father. To me, the highlight of this arc is how it creates a microcosm of Anakin's arc throughout the series. From the start of the arc, we see a clear parallel to Anakin's journey when the daughter brings Anakin to the father, just like Qui-Gon brought him to the Jedi as a boy. He was tested by both the father and the Jedi, and tested even further with the death of one of his loved ones, with Ahsoka and his mother. And even though things changed this time with Anakin using the light of the daughter to bring Ahsoka back to life, it wasn't enough to sway him away from the temptations the dark side presented him with. Through the son's breaking of the laws of time, showing Anakin his future, he effectively brought Anakin to his side, much like how his visions of Padme dying and Palpatine's manipulative words officially destroyed Anakin and gave birth to Darth Vader. But through guidance and wisdom brought on by another, Anakin finds the will to come back and redeem himself, destroying the source of his pain and darkness and bringing balance to the Force. This arc both subtly and overtly gives us a look at Anakin's arc as the Chosen One, and how he's the true embodiment of one's selflessness and selfishness. It's a thorough examination of what it truly means to bring balance to the Force and peace to the galaxy, even if it's a short one. I also love that it gives each of our heroes time to look into themselves and see what they truly fear and doubt about themselves with. Obi-Wan fears about failing as a master and disappointing his. Anakin fears losing those that he loves and feeling like a slave again to not just the Jedi, but to his anger and emotions. And Ahsoka is afraid about what the future may hold for her regarding herself and who her master will turn out to be. And the funny thing is, all these fears come true, and to this end, this arc was the first warning to all of them of what's to come. Not just Anakin in that brilliant scene where he sees his future. I still find myself fascinated about the existence of this world and the gods who inhabit it, how they provide perfect balance in this world and how it connects to the galaxy at large, how the filmmaking makes them all the grander with low angle shots and jumps in the editing whenever they transform into their respective creatures. This arc as a whole is wildly creative and interesting. It gives every character a moment to shine and shows that the series is ready to keep changing. I feel this is an arc that needs to be dissected more, especially in regards to what it does for the whole universe of Star Wars. Also, the Force is unleashed all around because the son and the daughter are voiced by Sam Witwer and Adrian Wilkinson, who played Starkiller and Maris Brood in The Force Unleashed respectively. God, I love that game.
Brian, the things are something different. Me from going lunatic. Falling up and down again. That's all the charge in the world.
I think many fans will tell you that the Umbara arc is when the show finally started clicking with more audiences, and when the show truly became one of the greatest projects in all of Star Wars. As a kid, I always thought this arc was neat, but I struggled to see why it was considered to be one of the show's greatest. Now, as an adult, yeah, no, I was wrong. This arc is a tour de force in the show's writing, characters, and thematic messaging. When the Republic sends their clone army to the separatist planet of Umbara and Jedi leadership is taken over by Jedi General Pong Krell, the clones start to reevaluate their stances on their loyalties, obedience, and the war itself. If arcs like the Domino Squad and the Deserter started the conversation of clones' individuality and their views on fighting, this arc is the one that really made that conversation louder than it has ever been before. Through the poor and reckless leadership of Krell, we get the opportunity to see each clone's personality and thoughts on the way everything's going about. We see clones like Fives, Kix, and Jesse who are firmly against the General's orders and prejudiced towards clones, while others like Hardcase and Dogma are either complicit in their loyalties to authority, or just wants to keep the fight going. Then there's Rex, who has to come to terms with his own free will and make a decision on who he's most loyal to, his general or his men, or rather, the system or his family. We see critical change in all these men, and no one is the same at the end of it all. It's very telling of things to come and reaffirms the message that everyone has free will. And this also leads into one of the greatest twist villain reveals I've ever seen, and really one of the greatest villains in all of Clone Wars, Pong Krell, who's voiced by Lee Everett from the Telltale Walking Dead games, which I never knew before.
These clones have had a difficult time respecting my commands since the beginning. I was, on my way to prison 3 months ago.
It wasn't for touching kids, was it?
To me, the reason why I think this twist is so effective is because it subverts how we would usually see this character arc. In any other story, Krell would see the errors of his actions and make strides to change to protect his men. But this couldn't be further from the truth of all of it. He doubles down on his hatred of clones and the Republic. He sends them off on multiple suicide missions. He disagrees with every plan Rex makes to an unreasonable degree. And yet, we still think that he's just being misguided or foolish because he's a Jedi. He can't seriously be acting this sort of way because of any selfish ulterior motives. Then comes Carnage of Krell. One of the best episodes in the series, where everything is laid out on the table for the clones and the viewer to see. Not only is Krell fully aware that his methods are getting more and more clones killed, but he concocts a plan that fully intends to kill them all. He sends Rex and the rest of his battalion to attack Ummmmm dressed as clones, only for Rex to realize in one of the most powerful and gut-wrenching scenes in all of Star Wars that those Ummmms they are killing are his own brothers. He now has the blood of his own on his hands, including Waxer from both the Ryloth and Geonosis arcs. If there was a moment to show people that the Clone Wars isn't just a kid's show anymore, this would be it. The pain, desperation, and sorrow in D. Bradley Baker's performance here had me in tears. He never thought that this would happen, that his undying loyalty to a cause he saw as right and just would be used so heinously that his own brothers are now deaths he caused in this war. This was when Rex's view on the war finally changed, all because of one man's quest to see absolute victory. The sheer brutality of Krell's rampage has seldom been this intense and visceral. He even throws out a line Palpatine would later say.
It's treason then.
The pieces were laid out in front of us from the first episode. Like, notice how when he leaves the battlefield after reprimanding his troops, the Ummmms start attacking again. That already clues you in that he might have some kind of relationship or plan with them to keep him alive and kill the clones. And after he's arrested and reveals his true motivations for the things he did, that he played them all so that he could be a part of the oncoming shift in power, we see how much this mission truly changed the clones. As Dogma, the most blindly loyal clone at Krell's command, is the one to pull the trigger. This arc is a testament to how well developed and explored the clones are. We cared for them and wished that things were different.
What's the point of all this? I mean, why? I don't know, sir. I don't think anybody knows. But I do know that someday this war is gonna end.
This line from Fives hits so much harder knowing what's to come for both him and his brothers.
Then what? We're soldiers. What happens to us then?
To me, this is the arc that turned Clone Wars from a great show to an all-time classic. And yet, the peaks didn't stop here. If there was a word to describe Maul's takeover arc of Season 5, it would be Shakespearean. After surviving many encounters with the Jedi, Maul and Savage team up with the Death Watch to take over Mandalore and lure Obi-Wan into a trap. The idea of a man hating someone so much that he would go as far as to murder his friends, team up with a terrorist organization, start a gigantic crime syndicate, take over a planet's government overnight, and effectively murdering the last of that planet's peace, all for it to eventually come crashing down by Satan himself. It's insane to me that somehow this isn't the best arc in the whole show. To me, this was my favorite story in the show as a kid. It showed Maul at his most badass, it had emotional deaths, amazing lightsaber duels, all that good stuff. But looking at the story now, it's a Greek tragedy if there ever was one. Maul is Star Wars' own Sisyphus. A man who survived death, caused innumerable amounts of agony for others, was crowned a king, only for a greater power to rain down punishment on him for never learning to move on forever. Maul, by his own choice, never learns anything. He is a victim to anger and darkness. He is stuck in his own squalor and vengeance for all eternity. He was a man who had everything, only to lose it all because of himself. Maul truly is one of the most vile, yet pitiable characters in all of Star Wars, thanks to this arc. Savage's fear of inadequacy made sure that he took up the wrong lessons, made the worst decisions, and died following the wrong path. This is also a tragedy as it completely brings down the peace that Mandalore has yearned for all this show. Through Maul, Pre Vizsla, and the Death Watch, Satine lost everything in the face of its past. Just like Maul, Mandalore has doomed itself to its own suffering. The only one to come out stronger in the end is Obi-Wan. Despite going through what is one of the most emotionally draining arcs in all of Star Wars, now losing the love of his life by the same man who killed his master, he never lets it consume him. If anything, the Jedi and the Senate perpetuate the self-destructive cycle of this arc. All of this could have been prevented if time wasn't wasted. If Palpatine and the Jedi allowed Obi-Wan permission to finish what he started, things might have been different. But because of Palpatine's obvious planning and the Jedi's increasing compliance, Mandalore fell, Maul ruled supreme, and one of the last good hearts in the galaxy was snuffed out. If you couldn't tell already, I love everything about this arc. Its direction is powerful, the cinematography purposeful, the score masterful, the characters remarkable, and its story unfathomable. There's also some great integration of elements from previous arcs here that get some kind of closure. We get a fitting end to Hondo and his pirates, with him at his most entertaining and badass.
I shall draw the brothers away. Once that's done, blast the passageway closed.
And leave you alone with the two crazies? Yeah, okay.
He also calls Maul and Savage horny.
Who are these horny-headed maniacs?
Many of the bounty hunters from previous episodes have their time to shine. This also meant we got the end of the Hutts.
Thank you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Obi-Wan uses the Twilight, which hasn't been seen in the show since season 2, as well as wearing his Rako Hardeen armor from his undercover arc, which just shows how personal and desperate of a mission this is for him. Even Satine's family from the Academy episode makes a small appearance here to help Satine. Though the road to this arc of this season was a rough one, the fact that this arc single-handedly flipped the story of the Clone Wars on its head made sure that this is an arc to be remembered. It's powerful, haunting, emotional, and unforgettable, which says a lot knowing it's just number 3. I don't think I need to tell you why Ahsoka's Odyssey is one of the greatest stories in the show. Hell, it's easily one of the best stories in all of Star Wars. Inspired by the works of Hitchcock, this arc sees Ahsoka framed for murder in the bombing of the Jedi Temple, leading to her being on the run from the Jedi and the Republic, trying to prove her innocence. At this point in the series, we've grown to love Ahsoka as she's grown into a better person with every passing season. So this arc is emblematic of everything Ahsoka has gone through in this series. Where she has grown years beyond her start, the Jedi of Zoan continue to deplete their image as peacekeepers. They are quick to make up their minds on the situation, and just like how they abandoned her to defend for herself in the Trandoshan arc, and refused to interfere in the Onderon arc, they destroy any and all trust she had for them when she's framed for a crime she didn't even commit. They have so lost their way, even the civilians below them have begun to rally in that same belief, leading Ahsoka to finally understand life beyond the Jedi. But just like those aforementioned arcs, the one person that has never given up on her and chooses to help her is her master. This is just as much an Anakin arc as it is an Ahsoka arc, as this arc shows how much they've grown together after all these years. He's actively trying to make sure Ahsoka has a chance to prove her innocence where others have quickly abandoned her. Anakin at this point in the series has only so much left for people he truly cares about. And his attachments to people, while admirable as he would do anything for them, shows how afraid he truly is to lose them. This is him acting on his full emotions, especially in the final episode where he finds out the truth. The twist that Barriss was the true mastermind behind this has been something that has grown on me as time passes on. As a kid, I thought the Jedi did nothing wrong. How could they? They're the ultimate good guys. Mace Windu is my senpai. Oh, how naive I was. Now I see that though her methods are evil and unjustifiable, what she says at the end is true. Everything I've said about the Jedi in this video is what's being said here. The Jedi are far too into this war to be called peacekeepers anymore. When she says that the Jedi are an army fighting for the dark side as the camera focuses on Palpatine, perfection. By getting into this conflict, they've fallen so far that they'll lead themselves to their downfall. It's only a matter of time. And while Ahsoka is free from this external conflict, it doesn't change the battle that is waging inside her. And now, we come to the moment that completely reshapes Ahsoka and the show as a whole. The moment where Ahsoka makes her choice to leave the Order. I'll keep my thoughts on this moment brief because talking about it means I'll be here for like another hour. But I'm gonna be honest, this is my favorite moment in all of Star Wars, and one of my favorite moments in all of fiction. From the subtle, moving filmmaking and score, to the voice actors at the top of their game, to every single word spoken here, it's a moment that changed me forever. And Anakin and Ahsoka's final confrontation never stops being so powerful. It provides more depth for these characters in 2 minutes than anything else that came before it. The arc pays off every lesson Ahsoka has learned in her time in the war, and opened up so many possibilities for her to keep growing. There's also some great integration of aspects from her previous arcs, obviously with the inclusion of characters like Barriss and Ventress from the Geonosis and New Gunray arcs respectively, and her mistrust of Tarkin carried over from the Citadel arc. But also seeing Tera Sinube from Lightsaber Lost training the same younglings from earlier in the season with the Gathering arc. I'm just so happy I get to live in a world where a character like Ahsoka exists. And we got a story as powerful, profound, and moving as this. And yet, there's somehow one arc that topped even that.
They've been waiting to see you. Loyalty means everything to the clones. Surely, you have felt it. The dark side has never been stronger. Every choice you have made has led you to this moment.
Yeah, chances are you already knew what was going to be number 1 even before clicking onto the video. This is not only the greatest story the Clone Wars has ever produced, but it's my favorite series finale of all time, and the best story that Star Wars has ever told. After Ahsoka reunites with her friends, she embarks on one final mission to liberate Mandalore, not knowing what colossal change in the galaxy is about to happen. Words cannot express how much this arc has affected me. Even though I knew where this arc would lead, and the ultimate conclusion of these characters' fates, it didn't stop me from feeling every modicum of dread. From the first episode showing Anakin facing down a whole army of droids, both calling back to Obi-Wan's stalling plan in the Clone Wars movie, and Luke's standoff against the First Order in The Last Jedi, hearing all the clones calling Ahsoka Commander despite being away for so long, and all of them having their helmets painted in her colors, it's all emotionally joyful. But in hindsight, makes those moments bittersweet, as we know that all those moments of bliss will come biting back. The reintroduction of Maul is as sinister as ever, but it's how his role is handled by the writing and Sam Witwer's performance that makes him the most compelling he's ever been. He forms a connection with Ahsoka through their shared pain of being casted out of their respective lives, and their need to stop what is about to come. Maul, more than even Kenobi, hates Palpatine for what he has done to him all his life, and turning him into the monster we all know him to be. So it makes perfect sense for his ultimate motivation to lie on finally killing Sidious and his prized pupil. Whereas Ahsoka has never been betrayed by her master, and she holds on to his trust and teachings wholeheartedly. So while she was willing to join Maul on his crusade to bring an end to this war and defeat the ultimate evil of the galaxy, she would never do it at the expense of Anakin's life. They're both right, and it makes everything that happens from here on out all the more distressing. And it makes their duel more emotionally complex. Speaking of which, holy hell, their duel is awesome. Bringing back Ray Park to motion cap Maul's moves in this duel is perfect. The way a choreography moves is engaging, and Kevin Kiner's score here is some of the most hard-hitting in all of Star Wars. And Maul pleading for Ahsoka to kill him is some of the rawest voice acting I've ever heard. And it makes the threat of what's to come all the more threatening. And while all has been well up until this point, the feeling of dread never leaves. Every episode I wondered, when will the hat finally drop and all the clones turn on Ahsoka? But the brilliance of this tension is how slowly the directors twist the knife with moments of quiet and patience. The aforementioned paint job on their helmets and them calling her commander is one thing, but the music switching from percussions to slow, low synthwave, the way the shots linger, like when Ahsoka and Rex travel back to the Venator, and their conversation in the command center about what the war has done to them and what did it all mean, just sets the stage perfectly for what's about to happen next.
Fight him!
Once Order 66 finally happens, we are then left with the question of how the hell will they get out of this one. We already know that Maul, Rex, and Ahsoka will make it out alive, but from this and the rest of this arc shows the hell they would have to go through in order to survive. It shows Maul at his most badass, taking down troopers like Vader did in Rogue One, Ahsoka having to use all she's learned to escape, and Rex having to come to terms with the fact that his brothers are gone. That scene where he and Ahsoka are pinned down and he starts crying, know that he's lost his brothers, is heartbreaking. Especially knowing that one of them is Jesse, who's been one of Rex's most loyal of brothers. And their ultimate escape is so thrilling, with Ahsoka running on debris from the ship while falling from the sky being one of her most badass moments. And then there's the final two scenes of the arc, which are just the most devastating final moments of the show, and one of the bleakest endings to anything I've ever watched. It's hauntingly quiet, with very little sound effects used, and only hearing Kevin Kiner's brilliant Blade Runner-inspired score to back the tragedy of these fallen men and the fate of the galaxy. The direction is striking, making sure to show every grave of these fallen heroes. And when Ahsoka lets go of her lightsaber, she's able to do what Maul and Anakin could never do. She moves on. While the war was when she started to forge her own identity, she now knows what it means to be a peacekeeper and to make her own path. And as the show comes to its final minutes, we now switch over to the great hero, now turned Phantom Apprentice himself, as he finds Ahsoka's lightsaber in the wreckage, and he looks up to find Morai flying above. With the way he holds the lightsaber to his side and the glance of his eye we see through his helmet, I like to believe that this is Vader as most reflective. The Clone Wars are over, but to what end? He's lost his wife, his kids, his best friend and mentor, but with the loss of Ahsoka, his hope is officially shattered. More than anyone else, Ahsoka was Anakin's rock whenever he needed someone to confide in. They were true friends, and Ahsoka learned so much from him. Now, all that is left is the memories they all shared. But that's where Anakin will be stuck in until the end. He'll be stuck looking back at an old friend not forgotten to time, but he can never move forward. And the final shot of the show of Vader moving away from the clone trooper helmet is a perfect symbol to end the show on. As massive as this war was, the victory and death that came about it will be buried under the weight of history, and the tragedy that came from this war will be forgotten. If you couldn't tell already, I love every single second of this arc. It never loses its pace, and it keeps its main focus on the characters. You can feel all the passion from the creators of the show to get this one arc right. It's my favorite piece of Star Wars storytelling, and it goes without saying that this is my favorite arc in Star Wars the Clone Wars. And that's the video. I am so tired. Anyways, I honestly had a blast with this. Rewatching the show was a complete joy. I forgot how much many of these arcs mean to me. I just love this show to death, and I hope that in a future time I could maybe do like an episode ranking, or I don't know. I just wanted to sing the show's praises even more than just this video. And this video is already long as hell, so you know that this show has had a massive impact on me if that's the case. Yeah, so I'm gonna sleep now. Have a good day, I guess. Bye!